Welcome, and thank you for joining us on this gentle journey into the past. As the day recedes and the quiet hours descend, we invite you to settle into a space of calm reflection. Tonight, we will embark upon a deliberate and unhurried exploration of a life that profoundly shaped the landscape of American music and indeed global culture. Our subject is Louis Armstrong, a name that resonates with the very essence of jazz, a figure whose presence was as monumental as his legacy is enduring. We will trace the contours of his existence, from the nascent stirrings of a new century in New Orleans, through the vibrant evolution of a musical form, and into the widespread recognition of an artist who transcended categories. This is not a journey to be rushed, nor a story to be consumed with haste. Instead, we offer a narrative woven with patience, allowing each thread of his experience to unfold with measured grace. Consider this an invitation to a meditative encounter with history. We will observe the quiet determination, the relentless creativity, and the unwavering spirit that characterized Louis Armstrong. His was a life lived amidst profound societal change, a life that mirrored the transformative power of the music he helped to forge and define. We will move through the decades, noting the subtle shifts and the grand pronouncements, the personal triumphs and the broader cultural movements that intersected with his path. Allow your mind to drift gently with the narrative as we bring forth the details of a remarkable journey. There's no need for urgency, only an openness to the quiet unfolding of a rich and complex human story. Louis Armstrong's influence extended far beyond the notes he played. It touched the hearts of millions, bridging divides and expressing the deepest human emotions. We will explore how a young man from humble beginnings became an international icon, a true pioneer whose artistry continues to inspire. Settle in and let us begin this tranquil exploration. Our journey into the life of Louis Armstrong begins in the vibrant crucible of New Orleans as the 19th century gave way to the 20th. Imagine the air, thick and humid, carrying a symphony of sounds unique to this extraordinary city. It was a place where the scent of magnolia blossoms mingled with the savoury aroma of Creole cooking, where the clatter of streetcars echoed alongside the distant tolling of church bells. New Orleans was, and remains, a city of profound sensory experience, a rich tapestry woven from diverse cultural threads. Here, the Mississippi River, a broad and powerful artery, brought influences from across the continent and the world. French, Spanish, African, and Caribbean traditions converged, creating a social and artistic landscape unlike any other in America. This confluence was not always harmonious, yet from its complex interactions emerged a unique cultural identity, a distinct way of life characterized by both hardship and exuberant celebration. In the narrow, winding streets, amidst the wrought-iron balconies and pastel-coloured facades, music was not merely entertainment. It was an omnipresent force, a living language. Echoes of spirituals from African American churches blended with the precise rhythms of European brass bands. The mournful cries of the blues drifted from juke joints, even while the festive strains of ragtime spilled from dance halls. Funeral processions, solemn and slow on the way to the cemetery, would often return with joyous foot-stomping improvisations, transforming sorrow into a celebration of life. This was the sonic environment into which Louis Armstrong was born on August 4th, 1901. His arrival coincided with a pivotal moment in musical history, a time when these disparate sounds were beginning to coalesce, to intermingle and intertwine in new and exciting ways. The city itself was a grand, unfolding composition, a place where improvisation was a way of life, and where the very air seemed to vibrate with an emerging musical consciousness. Within this intricate tapestry of sound and culture, the foundations were being laid for a revolutionary art form, and for the young boy who would one day become its most eloquent voice. Within the teeming sonic landscape of early 20th century New Orleans, a new life began. On August 4th, 1901, Louis Armstrong entered the world in a small, humble dwelling tucked away in a district known as Daniel's Alley. This was not a place of comfort or privilege. Daniel's Alley was a notoriously rough and impoverished corner of the city, a dense network of narrow passages and shotgun houses, teeming with life but also with the ever-present struggles of poverty. His mother, Mary Albert, a resilient woman known affectionately as Mayan, was just 16 years old at the time of Louis's birth. She would navigate the immense challenges of raising her children in this demanding environment, often working as a domestic helper and, at times, in less reputable establishments simply to put food on the table. Mayan possessed a strong spirit and a deep love for her family, qualities that would leave an indelible mark on her eldest son. Louis's father, William Armstrong, was largely absent from his early life. He had left the family shortly after Louis's birth, pursuing other relationships and offering little in the way of support or presence. This absence meant that Louis grew up without a consistent paternal figure, relying instead on the strength and resourcefulness of his mother and the broader, often turbulent community around him. The physical surroundings of Daniel's Alley were stark. Sanitation was rudimentary, living spaces were cramped, and life was often lived publicly, spilling out onto the alleyways. Yet, even in such challenging circumstances, a vibrant human spirit often found ways to express itself. There was a raw energy to the neighbourhood, a sense of camaraderie born from shared struggle, and a resilience that characterised its inhabitants. For young Louis, these formative years in Daniel's Alley were a crucible. They instilled in him a profound understanding of hardship, but also an enduring appreciation for the simple joys of life. He learned early to observe, to adapt, and to find beauty and rhythm amidst the cacophony. The sounds of the streets, the calls of vendors, the shouts of children, the faint strains of distant music, all became part of his sensory education, subtly shaping his perceptions and his burgeoning musical sensibilities. It was in this challenging yet intensely human environment that the bedrock of his character was formed, a character marked by both a profound humility and an indomitable spirit. The early years of Louis Armstrong's life were defined by an immediate and pressing need for survival. Growing up in Daniel's Alley meant that childhood was not a period of carefree play, but rather an early introduction to labour and responsibility. From a very young age, Louis understood the imperative of contributing to his household's meagre income. This necessity propelled him into various odd jobs, each demanding effort and fostering a growing sense of self-reliance. One of his earliest and most arduous tasks involved selling coal. He would push a heavy wheelbarrow through the uneven streets of New Orleans, calling out to potential customers, his young voice cutting through the humid air. This was physically demanding work, especially for a small boy, but it taught him perseverance and the value of honest labour. The rhythmic creak of the wheelbarrow, the weight of the coal, and the constant movement through the city became part of his daily experience, a silent lesson in enduring physical strain. Beyond selling coal, Louis engaged in other forms of street commerce. He delivered newspapers, navigating the city's labyrinthine passages before dawn, ensuring the news reached its subscribers. This job required punctuality and a keen awareness of his surroundings, sharpening his memory and his ability to move purposefully through the urban landscape. He also spent time collecting junk, sifting through discarded items in hopes of finding something of value that could be sold for a few precious pennies. These activities, though seemingly mundane, honed his observational skills and instilled in him a deep understanding of resourcefulness. Each of these early employments, while driven by economic hardship, played a crucial role in shaping the young Louis Armstrong. They fostered a remarkable resilience within him, a quiet determination to overcome obstacles. He learned to interact with diverse people, to negotiate, and to understand the rhythms of city life from a ground-level perspective. These were not merely tasks, they were lessons in character, building blocks for the remarkable individual he would become. Despite the constant demands of work, music was an ever-present force in the streets surrounding him. It seeped into the alleys from nearby saloons, churches, and parades. The sounds of brass bands, ragtime piano, and gospel hymns formed an ambient soundtrack to his daily struggles. While he was pushing a coal cart or delivering papers, these melodies, often unnoticed consciously, were undoubtedly weaving themselves into the fabric of his developing mind. The vibrant, spontaneous musical expressions of New Orleans provided a continuous, if often subliminal, education, offering a stark contrast to the physical demands of his early existence and hinting at a different path that lay ahead. Even amidst the daily grind of survival, the air of New Orleans offered a continuous, immersive education in sound. For young Louis, the city itself was a vast open-air concert hall, its streets and alleys reverberating with a symphony of disparate musical traditions. These were not formal lessons nor structured performances, but rather an organic, ever-present tapestry of sound that seeped into his consciousness, shaping his auditory landscape long before he ever touched an instrument. Marching bands were a particularly potent force. They paraded through the neighborhoods, often for funerals, celebrations, or simply to advertise an event. The powerful blast of cornets, the rich resonance of trombones, the deep pulse of tubas, and the driving rhythm of drums would fill the streets. These sounds were vibrant, immediate, and full of life, creating an indelible impression. Louis would often stop his chores, captivated by the spectacle and the sheer sonic energy, watching the musicians with an unspoken fascination. The brassy brilliance and collective improvisation of these street bands offered an early visceral understanding of ensemble playing. Beyond the grandeur of the marching bands, other musical forms were woven into the city's fabric. Spirituals and gospel hymns emanated from the many churches, their soulful melodies and powerful harmonies speaking of hope and resilience. These sounds carried a deep emotional weight, rooted in the experiences of the community, and provided an early exposure to vocal expressiveness and the emotive power of music. The blues, with its raw honesty and melancholic beauty, could be heard drifting from juke joints and saloons, often played on a guitar or piano. This music spoke of hardship, longing, and endurance, themes that resonated deeply with the realities of his own early life. The simple, repetitive structures and expressive vocalizations of the blues offered a profound lesson in storytelling through sound. Ragtime, characterized by its syncopated rhythms and lively piano melodies, was another ubiquitous sound. It was the popular music of the era, found in dance halls, brothels, and homes. The intricate, often playful rhythms of ragtime provided a different kind of musical complexity, an introduction to syncopation that would become a hallmark of jazz. These diverse musical expressions, from the communal power of brass bands to the intimate sorrow of the blues and the jaunty energy of ragtime, formed an unconscious foundation within Louis Armstrong. He absorbed them not through formal instruction, but through constant exposure, like breathing the very air of New Orleans. This ambient musical environment was a crucial, formative influence, quietly preparing him for a future where he would not only participate in these sounds, but profoundly transform them. The trajectory of Louis Armstrong's early life, though steeped in the informal education of New Orleans streets, took an unforeseen turn on New Year's Eve 1912. It was on this particular evening, a moment typically associated with celebration and new beginnings, that an incident occurred which would fundamentally alter the course of his existence. Young Louis, then barely 12 years old, found himself in possession of a pistol, a .38 caliber weapon. In a moment of youthful exuberance, perhaps influenced by the festive atmosphere, he fired the gun into the air. This act, seemingly innocuous in its intent, violated the law and attracted the attention of the authorities. The consequence was swift and decisive. Louis was apprehended and subsequently committed to the Coloured Waifs Home for Boys. This institution, located on the outskirts of the city, served as a correctional facility for young African American males. For a boy accustomed to the chaotic freedom of the streets, the transition to the structured, disciplined environment of the waif's home must have been a profound shock. The gates of the home closed behind him, separating him from the familiar sights and sounds of his neighbourhood, from his family, and from the informal musical education he'd been receiving. Yet, what might have appeared as a punitive measure, a setback in his already challenging life, would ultimately prove to be an unexpected blessing. The waif's home, despite its correctional purpose, offered something Louis had never truly known: stability and a degree of order. It provided regular meals, a clean bed, and a routine that was absent from his previous existence. More significantly, it offered a pathway to formal musical instruction, a structured learning environment that was utterly unattainable in his former circumstances. The home had a brass band, a common feature in such institutions during that period, intended to instill discipline and provide a constructive outlet for the boy's energies. It was here, within the confines of the waif's home, that Louis Armstrong was introduced to the rudiments of playing an instrument. Under the guidance of Captain Joseph Jones, the bandmaster, Louis began his musical journey not on the cornet, the instrument that would define his legacy, but initially on the tambourine, then the drums and eventually the alto horn. His natural aptitude for rhythm and melody, honed by years of absorbing New Orleans street sounds, quickly became apparent. Captain Jones, recognizing the boy's innate talent and enthusiasm, soon provided him with a cornet. This was the pivotal moment, the true turning point. With a formal instrument in his hands and structured lessons to follow, Louis began to translate the music he had internalized from the streets into conscious, deliberate practice. The waif's home, therefore, became more than just a place of confinement. It transformed into a sanctuary of musical discovery, providing the discipline and opportunity that unlocked the prodigious talent simmering within him. It was an unlikely crucible where the future king of jazz began to find his voice. Within the structured environment of the Coloured Waifs Home for Boys, a significant figure emerged who would serve as Louis Armstrong's first true musical mentor, Professor Peter Davis. While Captain Joseph Jones oversaw the general administration and the existence of the band, it was Davis who held the direct responsibility for teaching the boys how to play their instruments and understand the fundamentals of music. His role was crucial in channeling Louis's raw, untutored enthusiasm into a disciplined and coherent musical practice. Professor Davis was a patient and dedicated instructor, understanding the unique challenges and backgrounds of the boys under his care. He introduced them not only to the physical act of playing, but also to the basic theories that underpin musical composition and performance. For Louis, this was a revelation. Having previously absorbed music primarily through observation and imitation on the streets, he was now presented with a systematic approach to understanding scales, chords, and rhythmic patterns. The journey under Professor Davis's tutelage was a gradual progression. Louis did not immediately pick up the cornet. His initial assignments were simpler, designed to build a foundational understanding of rhythm and ensemble playing. He began, as many young musicians do, on the percussion, mastering the tambourine. This humble instrument, often overlooked, taught him precision in timing and the importance of contributing to a collective sound. From there, he moved to the drums, further developing his rhythmic sensibility and understanding of musical drive. The next step in his progression was the bugle. This instrument, done with its limited melodic range, required a different kind of breath control and embouchure development. Playing the bugle instilled a sense of purpose and the ability to project sound clearly. Each transition was a deliberate step, guided by Professor Davis's discerning eye and ear, designed to prepare Lewis for the more complex demands of a full brass instrument. Finally, after demonstrating a solid grasp of these foundational elements, Lewis was entrusted with the cornet. This was the culmination of his initial training at the waif's home. Professor Davis meticulously taught him the correct fingering, the proper way to form an embouchure, and how to produce a clear, resonant tone. He drilled Louis in scales and simple melodies, instilling the discipline necessary to master such a demanding instrument. This period under Professor Davis was invaluable. It provided Louis Armstrong with the technical foundation, the theoretical understanding, and the disciplined approach to practice that would underpin his entire career. The structure and guidance offered by Davis transformed Louis from an enthusiastic amateur into a budding musician, equipped with the fundamental skills to pursue his burgeoning passion. The waif's home, through the dedicated instruction of Professor Peter Davis, became the unexpected crucible where Louis Armstrong truly began to forge his unparalleled musical identity. Once the cornet was placed in Louis Armstrong's hands, his innate musicality, nurtured by years of absorbing the sounds of New Orleans, found its true outlet. His progress was remarkably swift, surprising even Professor Peter Davis. While other boys in the waif's home band struggled with the initial intricacies of the instrument, Louis seemed to possess an intuitive understanding, a natural affinity for the brass and the breath it required. His dedication was absolute. The cornet became an extension of himself, a means through which he could express the complex rhythms and melodies that had long resided within his memory and imagination. He spent countless hours practicing, far beyond the requirements set by Professor Davis. Every spare moment was dedicated to the instrument, his young mind dissecting the sounds he heard and translating them through his own developing technique. He would experiment with different ways to produce notes, to bend pitches, and to imbue each phrase with a particular feeling. This intense focus, combined with his inherent gifts, meant that Louis quickly began to outpace his peers. Where others played the notes as written, Louis began to imbue them with a distinctive character. He absorbed the foundational lessons of Professor Davis with ease, but his true genius lay in his ability to move beyond mere replication. Even at this tender age, the beginnings of his unique musical voice were perceptible. He wasn't just playing the cornet, he was beginning to converse through it. The sounds that had filled the streets of his youth, the blues laments, the syncopated rhythms of ragtime, the soaring lines of spirituals, now began to emerge from his cornet, filtered through his developing technique and personal understanding. He had a natural sense of swing, an ability to make the music dance, even in the context of the structured band arrangements. This was not something that could be taught. It was an intrinsic quality that set him apart. His ability to improvise, to create new melodies on the spot, was also a nascent talent that began to blossom during this period. While formal improvisation was not a primary focus of the waif's home band, Louis instinctively explored variations, adding his own flourishes to the standard repertoire. This early experimentation laid the groundwork for the improvisational mastery that would later define his career and revolutionize jazz. The experience at the waif's home, particularly the rapid progress on the cornet, instilled in Louis a profound confidence in his musical abilities. He realized that this instrument, this act of making music, was more than just a pastime. It was a calling. He had found his voice, a powerful means of communication that transcended words. This early mastery was not merely about technical proficiency. It was about the awakening of an extraordinary artistic spirit, a spirit that would soon captivate audiences far beyond the confines of the waif's home. After a period of structured discipline and profound musical discovery at the coloured waif's home, Louis Armstrong was eventually released, returning to the familiar, bustling thoroughfares of New Orleans. The transition from the regimented environment of the institution to the vibrant chaos of the city was significant, yet Louis carried with him an invaluable new asset, his cornet and the skills he had so diligently cultivated. The streets of New Orleans, which had once offered only an informal education in sound, now became his stage and his proving ground. He was no longer merely an observer of the city's musical tapestry. He was an active participant, ready to weave his own threads into its vibrant fabric. The formal training received from Professor Peter Davis had provided him with a solid foundation, a technical proficiency that few other young musicians in his neighbourhood possessed. Now, he sought to apply these skills in the real-world crucible of live performance. He began by playing in various street bands, often for little more than tips and the sheer joy of making music. These were not formal engagements in grand halls, but rather impromptu gatherings on street corners, alongside funeral processions, or as part of lively parades that snake through the city's districts. The energy of these performances was raw and immediate, demanding quick thinking and an ability to adapt to ever-changing circumstances. Louis's cornet, now an extension of his voice, began to stand out. His tone was clear and bright, his technique increasingly assured. He could articulate melodies with a precision that belied his youth, yet infused them with a warmth and soulfulness that captivated listeners. The lessons of harmony and rhythm learned at the waif's home allowed him to navigate complex musical interactions with other musicians, contributing to a cohesive yet spontaneous sound. He quickly found himself in demand, a testament to his burgeoning talent. Local band leaders and musicians began to take notice of the young man with the powerful cornet and an infectious enthusiasm for playing. These early engagements, though often humble, provided him with invaluable experience. Nay, he learned to play for different audiences, in varied settings, and alongside a diverse array of musicians. Each performance was a lesson, each note an opportunity to refine his craft. Earning a living solely through music was a challenging endeavour in early 20th century New Orleans, especially for a young black man. Yet, Louis was determined. He played tirelessly, sometimes for hours on end, his cornet cutting through the clamour of the city. The small sums he earned, whether from passing hats or meagre payments from band leaders, represented not just income, but validation. It was proof that his passion could sustain him, that the music he loved could also provide a path forward. His return to the streets marked the true beginning of his professional journey, a journey that would eventually lead him far beyond the confines of New Orleans. As Louis Armstrong honed his skills on the streets and in the modest venues of New Orleans, a towering figure in the city's burgeoning jazz scene cast a significant shadow, one that would prove to be a guiding light for the young cornetist. This figure was Joe King Oliver, a masterful cornet player whose sound was synonymous with the very essence of New Orleans jazz. Oliver was not only a celebrated musician, but also a figure of immense respect within the black community of the city. For Louis, King Oliver was more than just a famous cornetist. He was an idol, a hero whose every note resonated deeply within the aspiring young musician. Oliver possessed a commanding presence, both musically and personally, and his innovative use of mutes and his powerful expressive tone set him apart from his peers. Louis would often stand for hours, or mesmerized, listening to Oliver play, absorbing every nuance of his technique and improvisation. What developed between them was a relationship far deeper than that of a fan and a performer. Oliver recognized the raw talent and burning ambition within Louis. He saw a glimmer of his own passion reflected in the younger man's eyes. Consequently, King Oliver began to take Louis under his wing, assuming a role akin to that of a surrogate father. This was a critical relationship for Louis, who had largely grown up without a consistent paternal presence. Oliver offered Louis not just musical advice, but also practical support. He would sometimes provide the younger cornetist with old instruments, allowing Louis to upgrade his equipment as his skills progressed. These gestures were invaluable, as quality instruments were often beyond Louis's financial reach. More importantly, Oliver offered encouragement, a steady hand, and a belief in Louis's potential that went beyond mere musical appreciation. He shared insights into the intricacies of playing the cornet, the dynamics of leading a band, and the unspoken language of jazz improvisation. These interactions were formative, instilling in Louis a deeper understanding of the music and the professionalism required to succeed. King Oliver taught him the importance of originality, of developing a unique voice, even while respecting the traditions of the music. The bond between them grew, built on mutual respect and a shared love for the vibrant sounds of New Orleans. This mentorship, characterized by Oliver's generosity and wisdom, laid the essential groundwork for a future collaboration that would profoundly shape the trajectory of jazz itself. The stage was being quietly set for Louis Armstrong to step out from Oliver's shadow, not as a rival, but as a brilliant successor. With his cornet skills blossoming and the quiet encouragement of mentors like King Oliver, Louis Armstrong began to navigate the professional music landscape of New Orleans, which often led him to the heart of its most vibrant and, at times, most notorious district, Storyville. This was the city's legally sanctioned red light area, a place pulsating with life, music, and an array of human experiences. It was within the honky-tonk saloons and dance halls of Storyville that Louis truly cut his teeth as a working musician. These early gigs were a crucible, each shaping his understanding of performance and audience engagement. The venues themselves were often boisterous and dimly lit, filled with a diverse clientele. Sailors on shore leave, local workers, pleasure seekers, and the residents of Storyville itself all mingled, their varied energies contributing to the unique atmosphere. For a young musician like Louis, playing in such environments demanded not only technical proficiency, but also an acute sense of adaptability. The music played in these establishments was raw and immediate, often driven by the spontaneous energy of the moment. Improvisation was not merely an embellishment, it was the very essence of the performance. Musicians would respond to the mood of the room, to the dancers on the floor, and to each other, weaving intricate melodic lines and rhythmic patterns on the fly. Louis, with his already strong foundation, thrived in this dynamic setting. He learned to listen intently, to anticipate, and to contribute his own voice to the collective sound in a way that felt both natural and compelling. These were not formal concert halls with hushed audiences. Instead, the music served multiple purposes. It provided a backdrop for conversation, spurred on the dancers, and offered a release from the daily struggles of life. Louis played for tips, for the sheer joy of creation, and for the invaluable experience gained with every passing hour. He learned the art of pacing a set, of building excitement, and of sustaining a connection with listeners who might be distracted by their own pursuits. The sounds of Storyville were a rich tapestry. The blues, ragtime, spirituals, and marching band melodies all converged, blending into the nascent form of jazz. Louis absorbed these influences, allowing them to seep into his playing, enriching his personal style. He witnessed the full spectrum of human emotion, from fleeting joy to profound melancholy, and learned to translate these observations into his music. These early professional experiences, amidst the lively and sometimes challenging backdrop of Storyville, were indispensable. They forged him into a musician who could not only play with extraordinary skill, but also connect deeply with any audience, laying the groundwork for the universal appeal he would later command. The vibrant, often chaotic musical landscape of Storyville had provided Louis Armstrong with an invaluable apprenticeship, sharpening his improvisational instincts and deepening his understanding of performance. Yet, a new chapter was soon to unfold, one that would transport him beyond the confines of New Orleans and introduce him to a more structured yet equally enriching musical environment. This pivotal experience came in the form of riverboat orchestras, particularly with the band led by the esteemed pianist Fate Marable. In 1919, Louis joined Marable's band, embarking on a journey up and down the Mississippi River. These grand steamboats, floating palaces of entertainment, offered a different kind of stage than the gritty honky-tonks of Storyville. The audiences were often more diverse, encompassing passengers from various walks of life and different regions, each with their own expectations and musical tastes. This exposure broadened Lewis's understanding of what music could be and how it could appeal to a wider public. Crucially, the riverboat bands, under leaders like Marable, operated with a higher degree of musical formality than many New Orleans groups. While improvisation remained an essential element, there was a greater emphasis on reading written music. Many of the musicians in Marable's orchestra were formally trained, possessing skills in sight reading and arrangement that were less prevalent in the more intuitive, ear-driven jazz ensembles of New Orleans. For Louis, whose musical education had largely been informal, this presented a significant challenge and an unparalleled opportunity for growth. Fate Marable was a demanding but fair leader. He insisted that his musicians be proficient sight readers, capable of navigating complex arrangements and performing a wide repertoire of popular songs, waltzes, polkas, and light classical pieces, in addition to the burgeoning jazz forms. Louis, with his inherent musicality and relentless drive, applied himself diligently to this new discipline. He spent countless hours poring over sheet music, often with the patient guidance of older band members, slowly deciphering the symbols and translating them into sound on his cornet. This period was transformative. It instilled in Louis a newfound discipline and a deeper understanding of musical theory and structure. He learned the value of precision, of playing in unison with other instruments, and of executing intricate arrangements. While his heart remained rooted in the soulful, spontaneous expression of New Orleans jazz, his mind was now open to the broader possibilities of composed music. The riverboat journey was not just a geographical one. It was a profound musical odyssey that expanded his technical capabilities, refined his artistry, and prepared him for the national and international stages that awaited him. He was no longer just a brilliant improviser. He was becoming a complete musician, equipped with a versatile skill set that would serve him throughout his long and influential career. The riverboat rhythms had broadened Louis Armstrong's musical horizons, but the heart of jazz was beginning to beat with a new intensity in a different northern city. As the 1910s drew to a close and the 1920s began, the Great Migration saw a significant movement of African Americans from the southern states to urban centers in the north, seeking better opportunities and an escape from racial oppression. Among those who made this journey were many New Orleans musicians, and carrying the nascent sounds of jazz with them. One such musician was Joe King Oliver, Lewis's revered mentor and surrogate father. Oliver, sensing the changing tides and the growing demand for jazz beyond New Orleans, had made the move to Chicago. This bustling metropolis, with its burgeoning nightlife and burgeoning black communities, quickly became a magnet for musical talent. Oliver's reputation as a cornetist of unparalleled skill preceded him, and he soon established his own band, King Oliver's Creole Jazz Band, which quickly rose to prominence as one of the most exciting and influential groups in the city. In 1922, a momentous invitation arrived for Louis Armstrong. King Oliver, recognizing the unique genius and unparalleled potential of his young protégé, extended an offer for Louis to join his band in Chicago. So this was more than just a job offer. It was a summons from his mentor, a call to the very epicenter of the evolving jazz world. For Louis, still relatively young and deeply rooted in the familiar streets and sounds of New Orleans, this decision was profound. Leaving New Orleans meant venturing into the unknown, away from the comfort of family, friends, and the only home he'd ever known. It meant stepping onto a larger, more competitive stage, where the stakes were higher and the expectations greater. Yet, the opportunity to play alongside King Oliver, to learn from him daily, and to contribute to one of the most celebrated jazz ensembles of the era was an irresistible draw. The prospect of further honing his craft, of being part of the cutting edge of jazz innovation, outweighed the natural apprehension of leaving home. The journey to Chicago represented a significant turning point, a departure from the provincial charm of New Orleans to the industrial dynamism of the North. It was a leap of faith, an embrace of destiny. Louis Armstrong packed his cornet and his modest belongings, leaving behind the city that had nurtured his beginnings, ready to embark on the next crucial phase of his remarkable musical odyssey, under the guiding hand of King Oliver in the vibrant heart of jazz's new capital. The train ride from New Orleans to Chicago in the summer of 1922 was more than a mere physical journey for Louis Armstrong. It was a passage into a new era, a landscape of heightened possibilities. As the flat Louisiana lowlands gave way to the sprawling industrial expanse of the North, Armstrong carried with him the sounds and sensibilities of his birthplace, and yet he was keenly aware that a different kind of musical world awaited him. The anticipation of joining King Oliver, his mentor, in a city that was rapidly becoming the heart of jazz, filled the journey with a quiet excitement. Upon his arrival, Chicago presented itself as a city of stark contrast to New Orleans. The humid, languid pace of the South was replaced by a bustling, energetic tempo. Skyscrapers reached towards the sky, and the streets teemed with a diverse populace. For a young man from the Third Ward, the sheer scale and modernity of Chicago must have been striking. But it was the city's nocturnal landscape that held the most profound allure. Prohibition, rather than stifling the desire for spirits, had merely driven it underground, giving rise to a vibrant and extensive network of speakeasies, cabarets, and dance halls. Yet these establishments, often hidden behind unassuming facades, pulsed with an illicit energy, providing fertile ground for jazz music to flourish. The air in these venues was thick with the scent of bootleg liquor, cigarette smoke, and the exhilarating sound of live music. Chicago's South Side, in particular, was a crucible of black culture and artistic innovation, where musicians from across the country converged, contributing to a rich tapestry of sounds. Louis Armstrong found himself immersed in a jazz scene that was both familiar in its New Orleans roots and exhilaratingly new in its expression. The competition was fierce, the standards high, and the musicianship exceptional. He was no longer a big fish in the smaller pond of New Orleans. He was now a vital part of an ensemble that was already considered legendary. Joining King Oliver's Creole Jazz Band meant stepping into a spotlight of national significance. The challenge was considerable, but so was the opportunity. Armstrong had to adapt to the band's established dynamics, to play within its intricate arrangements, and to find his voice within the collective sound. His arrival was met with a quiet curiosity from the other band members, who knew of his reputation, but now witnessed his talent firsthand. The environment was one of intense musical camaraderie and friendly rivalry, pushing each musician to elevate their performance. This new horizon in Chicago was not merely a change of scenery. It was a profound evolution in Louis Armstrong's artistic journey, laying the groundwork for his eventual ascent to individual stardom. Within the bustling confines of Chicago's Lincoln Gardens, where King Oliver's Creole Jazz Band held court, a unique musical alchemy began to unfold with Louis Armstrong's presence. The band itself was renowned, but it was the synergy between Oliver and Armstrong, particularly in their celebrated two-cornet breaks, that truly captivated audiences and etched itself into the annals of jazz history. These duets were not merely a succession of notes played in unison or in simple call and response. They were a profound conversation, an intricate dance between two instruments, guided by an almost telepathic understanding. King Oliver, with his warm, expressive tone and his pioneering use of mutes, would often lay down a melodic foundation or a thematic statement. Then, Louis Armstrong, with his clear, powerful sound and burgeoning improvisational genius, would respond, embellish, or mirror, often playing a counter-melody that seemed to weave seamlessly into Oliver's line. The magic lay in their synchronized improvisations. It was a delicate balance of prearranged structure and spontaneous creation. While some passages might have been loosely planned, the true brilliance emerged in the moments where both cornetists would seemingly anticipate each other's musical thoughts, executing complex, interwoven phrases with breathtaking precision. This was revolutionary for its time. Jazz had always celebrated improvisation, but this level of coordinated yet spontaneous dual improvisation was something new and exhilarating. Audiences at Lincoln Gardens would often fall into a hushed reverence during these breaks, then erupt in thunderous applause. The sound was rich, full, and dynamic, creating a sense of exhilaration that permeated the smoky rooms. It was a demonstration of musical communication at its highest form, a testament to the deep bond and mutual respect between mentor and protégé. Through these iconic duets, Louis Armstrong's reputation began to solidify and expand beyond New Orleans. Musicians and critics alike recognized the extraordinary talent he brought to the band. While he played a supportive role to Oliver, his distinct voice, his impeccable timing, and his increasingly adventurous melodic ideas were undeniable. The two-cornet breaks became a signature of the Creole Jazz Band, a testament to their collective brilliance and a foundational element in the development of ensemble jazz. These recordings, though acoustically primitive by modern standards, captured a pivotal moment in the evolution of the genre, showcasing Armstrong's burgeoning genius and his profound connection with his mentor. Amidst the vibrant musical tapestry of King Oliver's Creole Jazz Band, another significant figure emerged, one who would play a transformative role in Louis Armstrong's personal and professional life, Lillian Hardin. Known to all as Lil, she was the band's accomplished pianist, a highly skilled musician and composer in her own right, possessing a formal education from Fisk University. Her presence within the ensemble was not merely as a performer, but as a discerning observer of talent. Lil Hardin possessed a sharp intellect and a keen understanding of the music business, a perspective somewhat broader than that of many of her male counterparts in the early jazz scene. She recognized, almost immediately, the extraordinary untapped potential within Louis Armstrong. While he was content to play second cornet to his mentor King Oliver, Lil saw a burgeoning star, a musician destined for leadership and greater prominence. Their relationship blossomed, and in February of 1924, Louis Armstrong and Lil Hardin were married, marking the beginning of a partnership that extended far beyond their personal lives. Lil became a formidable advocate for Louis, gently but persistently urging him to step out from Oliver's shadow. She believed that remaining in the second chair was hindering his artistic growth and limiting his financial opportunities. Her encouragement was not born of discontent with Oliver's band, but from a profound conviction in Lewis's singular genius. Lil's influence extended to refining Lewis's image and presentation. She recognized that to achieve wider recognition, he needed to cultivate a more polished stage presence. She encouraged him to dress more stylishly, to articulate himself more clearly, and to project an image befitting a band leader rather than merely a sideman. These subtle but significant changes contributed to his growing confidence and his ability to command an audience, not just with his horn, but with his entire persona. Her persistent encouragement to pursue greater opportunities eventually led to a pivotal decision. Lil Hardin's unwavering belief in Lewis's potential provided the impetus for him to consider leaving King Oliver's band, a move that, while difficult for Armstrong due to his loyalty to Oliver, proved to be a crucial turning point. She saw the future clearly, understanding that Louis Armstrong was not merely a brilliant musician, but a cultural force waiting to be unleashed. Her vision, combined with her practical guidance, helped to steer him towards the path of independent stardom, forever altering the trajectory of his career and the evolution of jazz itself. The decision to depart from King Oliver's Creole jazz band was not one Louis Armstrong made lightly, nor was it without a profound sense of internal conflict. His loyalty to Joe Oliver ran deep, forged in the crucible of New Orleans Storyville and solidified through their shared musical journey and Oliver's mentorship. Oliver had been a father figure, a teacher, and the one who had extended the hand of opportunity, bringing Armstrong to the burgeoning jazz hub of Chicago. The bond between them was more than professional, it was familial. Yet, a new set of forces was at play, subtly but persistently pulling Armstrong in a different direction. His musical ambition, though perhaps unspoken for a time, was growing. The telepathic duets with Oliver had showcased his brilliance, but the format inherently placed him in a supporting role. He was a second voice, albeit an extraordinary one, to Oliver's lead. As his own improvisational ideas grew more complex and his individual style matured, the confines of the two-corner structure began to feel increasingly restrictive. Moreover, Lil Hardin's unwavering belief in his singular talent and her astute observations about his potential were a constant, gentle pressure. She saw beyond the established order of the band and envisioned Louis as a leader, a star in his own right. Her encouragement was not about disrespecting Oliver, but about recognizing the natural evolution of an unparalleled artist. She understood that for Louis to fully realize his artistic vision, he needed a platform where he could express his ideas without constraint, where his voice would be the primary one. The economic realities also played a role. While King Oliver's band was successful, opportunities for greater financial reward and broader recognition beckoned, particularly for a musician of Armstrong's caliber. The desire for artistic freedom and the aspiration for a more prominent role, both musically and professionally, began to outweigh the comfort and familiarity of his position with Oliver. Ultimately, despite the deep affection and respect he held for King Oliver and his seat, Louis Armstrong made the difficult choice to leave. It was a step into the unknown, a severance of a profound musical and personal connection, but one driven by an undeniable inner imperative. This decision, born of ambition and a quiet yearning for self-expression, marked the end of one significant chapter and the threshold of another, where Louis Armstrong would begin to forge his own distinct path, carrying the lessons learned from Oliver while preparing to revolutionize jazz in ways no one had yet imagined. Following his departure from King Oliver's band, a new chapter unfolded for Louis Armstrong, one that would transport him from the familiar jazz landscape of Chicago to the bustling metropolis of New York City. The year was 1924, and the invitation came from Fletcher Henderson. a prominent band leader whose orchestra was then considered one of the most sophisticated and successful black ensembles in the country. This move represented a significant shift, not just geographically, but also musically, as Armstrong prepared to integrate his unique style into a different kind of musical environment. Fletcher Henderson's orchestra was known for its polished arrangements, its meticulous structure, and its generally smoother, more refined sound, often leaning towards a dance band aesthetic. The musicians were highly skilled, many of them classically trained, and the ensemble played with a precision that was admired throughout the industry. Into this structured world stepped Louis Armstrong, carrying with him the raw, fiery essence of New Orleans jazz, a style characterized by its spontaneity, its rhythmic drive, and its deeply personal, blues-inflected improvisations. His arrival in New York was met with a mixture of curiosity and, for some, perhaps a degree of skepticism. Armstrong's playing style was unlike anything many of these musicians, or indeed New York audiences, had regularly encountered in a big band setting. He brought with him an intensity, a hotness, that was both exhilarating and initially somewhat disruptive to the established order of Henderson's arrangements. Where others might play a written melody with exactitude, Armstrong would imbue it with a personal inflection, bending notes, adding rhythmic syncopation, and injecting a profound sense of swing that was utterly his own. His solos were revelations. They were not merely embellishments, they were fully formed, emotionally charged narratives that captivated listeners and inspired his fellow musicians. He demonstrated that improvisation could be more than just a brief break. It could be the very heart of a performance, carrying immense melodic and rhythmic weight. The impact on the Henderson Orchestra was palpable. Armstrong's presence gradually began to electrify the band, infusing their more formal arrangements with a newfound vitality and a deeper blues sensibility. He pushed them, often subtly, to embrace a more improvisational spirit, demonstrating through his own playing the boundless possibilities of spontaneous musical creation. This period in New York, though relatively brief, was transformative. Armstrong acted as a catalyst, introducing the vibrant, unbridled spirit of hot jazz to a broader audience and to a more structured musical context. He served as a bridge between the earlier, more collective improvisation of New Orleans jazz and the emerging big band sound, subtly but powerfully reshaping the trajectory of American popular music. Louis Armstrong's tenure with Fletcher Henderson's orchestra, though lasting only a little over a year, left an indelible mark not only on the band itself, but also on the broader landscape of jazz in New York City. His unique approach to playing and his profound musicality began to subtly, yet fundamentally reshape the expectations of what a jazz soloist could achieve. Before Armstrong, the emphasis in many jazz ensembles, particularly in the collective improvisation of early New Orleans style, was on the interplay of multiple instruments. While solo breaks existed, they were often brief, serving as interjections within a larger interwoven tapestry of sound. Armstrong, however, elevated the solo to a new plane. His improvisations were not mere technical displays. They were deeply expressive, melodically rich narratives that commanded attention. Each note he played seemed to carry a weight of emotion and a clear sense of purpose. His solos became the focal point of many of Henderson's arrangements, drawing audiences into a deeper engagement with the music. Musicians within the band, and indeed across the city, listened intently to his every phrase. They observed his unparalleled rhythmic drive, the way he could swing a melody with an irresistible propulsion, and the sheer inventiveness of his ideas. Armstrong demonstrated how a soloist could transcend the written page, creating something entirely new and compelling in the moment. This influence began to shift the paradigm of jazz performance. The concept of the featured soloist, a singular voice rising above the ensemble to articulate a profound musical statement, gained increasing prominence. Musicians started to consciously develop their individual soloing abilities, striving for the kind of melodic sophistication and rhythmic vitality that Armstrong so effortlessly displayed. He provided a clear example of how to construct a coherent, engaging solo that told a story, rather than simply filling space. Fletcher Henderson himself, an astute and intelligent musician, recognized the transformative power of Armstrong's contributions. He began to integrate Armstrong's soloistic approach more consciously into his arrangements, so as to writing specific sections that would allow for Armstrong's improvisation to shine. This, in turn, influenced other arrangers and bandleaders, slowly but surely steering the big band format towards a greater appreciation for individual expression within an orchestral context. The seeds of what would later become the swing era, with its emphasis on powerful soloists backed by driving ensembles, were undeniably sown during Armstrong's impactful time with Henderson in New York. Having spent a transformative period in New York, Louis Armstrong felt the pull of Chicago once more. His time with Fletcher Henderson had broadened his musical horizons and solidified his reputation as an extraordinary talent. Yet, the desire for greater artistic control and the opportunity to truly lead his own musical endeavors remained strong. It was in Chicago, upon his return in 1925, that this ambition would find its most profound expression through a series of groundbreaking recordings. These recordings were made with two specific studio ensembles, the Hot Fives and subsequently the Hot Sevens. It is crucial to understand that these were not touring or performing bands in the traditional sense. They were specially assembled groups primarily for the purpose of capturing Armstrong's innovative artistry on wax. The Hot Fives, formed first, typically consisted of Armstrong on cornet and later trumpet, Lil Hardin Armstrong on piano, Johnny Dodds on clarinet, Kid Ory on trombone, and Johnny St. Cyr on banjo. This intimate configuration provided a perfect canvas for Armstrong's creative genius. The atmosphere in these recording sessions, often held by OK Records, was one of focused innovation. As Armstrong was given unprecedented freedom to shape the musical direction, to select the tunes, and to interpret them with his characteristic flair. The recordings from this period, spanning from 1925 to 1928, are widely regarded as some of the most influential in the entire history of jazz. They documented Armstrong's evolution from a brilliant ensemble player to an unparalleled soloist, a process that had begun to blossom in New York and now reached its full fruition. Later, in 1927, the group expanded to include Pete Briggs on tuba and Baby Dodds on drums, thus becoming the Hot Sevens. The addition of a bass instrument and drums provided a more robust rhythmic foundation, allowing for even greater dynamic range and textural possibilities. Despite the change in personnel and size, the fundamental purpose remained the same: to document Armstrong's singular musical vision. These recordings captured Armstrong's burgeoning vocal talents as well, as he began to introduce his distinctive scat singing, a revolutionary vocal improvisation technique that treated the voice as an instrument, using nonsense syllables to mimic instrumental lines. The Hot Fives and Sevens recordings served as a vital sonic archive, preserving for posterity the moments where jazz truly began to transform from a collective folk art into a sophisticated, individualistic art form, largely through the genius of Louis Armstrong. They became, and remain, essential listening for anyone seeking to understand the foundational developments of jazz. The recordings made by Louis Armstrong's Hot Fives and Hot Sevens represent a pivotal moment in the evolution of jazz, serving as a sonic textbook for generations of musicians. Within these grooves, Armstrong's virtuosity moved beyond mere technical brilliance. it became a vehicle for profound emotional expression and structural innovation. He demonstrated a mastery of his instrument that was unprecedented, navigating complex melodic lines with an effortless grace and a robust, singing tone that resonated deeply. Before these sessions, improvisation in jazz often consisted of collective embellishment or short thematic variations. Armstrong, however, fundamentally reshaped this paradigm. He introduced the concept of the extended coherent solo, a narrative arc within the larger composition, developing themes, building tension, and releasing it with a logical progression. Each solo was a miniature masterpiece, demonstrating an advanced harmonic understanding and an innate sense of swing that propelled the music forward. He was not merely playing notes, he was telling a story through his cornet or trumpet, a story that captivated listeners and inspired countless aspiring musicians. A defining characteristic of these recordings was Armstrong's fearless exploration of his own voice, not just through his horn, but literally through singing. It was during these sessions that the technique of scat singing truly emerged and was popularized. Legend has it that during a 1926 recording of Heebie-Jeebies, Armstrong dropped his sheet music and rather than stopping spontaneously began to improvise with nonsense syllables, mimicking the sound and rhythm of a horn solo. This moment, whether entirely apocryphal or partly true, crystallized a new vocal art form. Scat singing, as pioneered by Armstrong, treated the human voice as another instrument in the ensemble. It allowed for rhythmic and melodic freedom, enabling vocalists to improvise with the same agility and inventiveness as instrumentalists. This innovation not only added another layer of texture and excitement to his performances, but also influenced generations of singers who followed, from Ella Fitzgerald to contemporary vocalists. The Hot Fives and Sevens recordings, therefore, are far more than historical artifacts. They are living documents of a revolution. They enshrined the jazz soloist as the central creative force in the music, showcasing Armstrong's breathtaking improvisational skill, his warm, inviting tone, and his groundbreaking vocal artistry. Through these records, Armstrong definitively established the blueprint for jazz soloing, moving the music into an era where individual expression and masterful improvisation became its defining characteristics. They are a testament to his profound impact, a quiet yet powerful declaration of a new musical era. During the period of the Hot Fives and Sevens, Louis Armstrong's improvisational style crystallized into a form that transcended the existing boundaries of jazz, effectively creating a new musical language. His melodic inventiveness during these years was extraordinary. Prior to Armstrong, many jazz improvisers would primarily embellish the melody, staying close to the original theme. Armstrong, however, ventured far beyond this. He constructed entirely new melodic lines, yet often soaring above the established chord changes, yet always retaining a deep connection to the underlying harmonic structure. His solos were not merely decorations, they were independent compositions created in the moment, each phrase carefully crafted, yet imbued with an exhilarating spontaneity. His rhythmic sophistication was equally revolutionary. Armstrong possessed an unparalleled sense of swing, a natural elasticity that allowed him to play ahead of, behind, or directly on the beat with deliberate intention. This rhythmic flexibility created a dynamic tension and release within his solos, making the music breathe and dance in a way that had not been heard before. He introduced syncopation and rhythmic displacement with such naturalness that it felt effortless. Yet it was precisely this understated complexity that gave his playing its irresistible propulsion. He understood that rhythm was not merely a foundation, but an expressive tool, capable of conveying nuance and excitement. Beyond the technical brilliance, it was the profound emotional depth Armstrong brought to his playing that truly set him apart. His trumpet or cornet did not just play notes, it sang, it cried, it laughed, it celebrated. There was a warmth and humanity in his tone that communicated directly to the listener's soul. Whether he was playing a blues-inflected lament or a joyous up-tempo romp, his music was infused with an authenticity of feeling that was deeply moving. This emotional resonance was not accidental. It was a deliberate choice, an understanding that music at its core was about communication and connection. Through these innovations, Armstrong effectively invented the modern jazz vocabulary. He provided a blueprint for how to improvise, how to construct a solo, how to blend melodic ingenuity with rhythmic sophistication and emotional sincerity. Musicians everywhere began to study his recordings, not just to imitate his licks, but to understand the underlying principles of his genius. He showed them that improvisation was not just about skill, but about storytelling, about expressing one's unique voice within the framework of the music. The language he forged during this era became the foundation upon which all subsequent jazz improvisation would be built, a testament to his enduring and profound influence. Beyond his monumental contributions on the trumpet, Louis Armstrong also left an indelible mark on vocal jazz through his pioneering use of scat singing. This innovative form of vocal improvisation, where the singer uses nonsense syllables to create melodic and rhythmic patterns, became a signature element of his performances and a defining characteristic of early jazz singing. While elements of vocal improvisation existed in various forms of African American music before Armstrong, he was instrumental in popularizing and formalizing scat as a distinct jazz technique. The popular story of the birth of modern scat singing often centers around the recording session for Heebie-Jeebies in 1926. As the narrative goes during the recording, Armstrong's sheet music fell to the floor, leaving him momentarily without the lyrics. Rather than stopping the take, he improvised, and singing a string of nonsense syllables that mimic the sound of a trumpet solo. This spontaneous moment, born out of necessity, was captured on the recording and met with enthusiastic reception. The record became a significant hit, and the novel vocal technique quickly captivated audiences and musicians alike. Whether entirely accurate or embellished over time, the Heebie-Jeebies story effectively illustrates the spirit of Armstrong's musical ingenuity and his readiness to experiment. Scat singing allowed him to extend his instrumental improvisational concepts to his voice, treating his vocal cords as another instrument capable of complex melodic and rhythmic invention. His vocalizations were not merely random sounds, they were carefully constructed phrases, often mirroring the intricate lines he would play on his trumpet. He utilized his remarkable sense of timing and pitch to weave intricate vocal tapestries full of playful syncopation and a rich, warm timbre. The impact of Armstrong's scat singing was profound and far-reaching. It liberated vocalists from the strictures of lyrics, opening up new avenues for expressive freedom. Singers who followed in his wake, such as Ella Fitzgerald, Cab Calloway and Sarah Vaughan, were deeply influenced by his innovations, developing their own unique approaches to scat. Armstrong demonstrated that the human voice could be as agile and as improvisational as any instrument, capable of carrying a solo with the same melodic coherence and rhythmic drive. Scat singing, as popularized by Armstrong, became more than just a novelty. It was an integral part of the jazz lexicon, embodying the spontaneity, joy, and technical prowess that defined the genre. It allowed him to engage with the music in a holistic way, blurring the lines between instrumentalist and vocalist, and solidifying his status as a complete musical innovator. His voice, in its playful and profound scatting, added another layer to the revolutionary sound he was crafting, further establishing his legacy as a transformative figure in 20th century music. As Louis Armstrong's musical vision expanded and his presence on the bandstand grew, a subtle yet significant shift occurred in his instrumental choice. Having established himself as a master of the cornet, the instrument of his earliest training and initial triumphs, he gradually transitioned to the trumpet. This change, which began to solidify during his time with the Hot Fives and Sevens, and as his career progressed, was not merely cosmetic, it profoundly impacted the character of his sound and his performance capabilities. The cornet, with its more conical bore and compact tubing, typically produces a mellower, rounder, and somewhat darker tone. It was the preferred instrument in early jazz ensembles, particularly in New Orleans, where its warmth blended well with the collective improvisation style. Armstrong had achieved unparalleled expressiveness and power on the cornet, pushing its boundaries beyond previous imagination. Yet, as jazz evolved, and as Armstrong's own soloistic approach became more prominent, the inherent characteristics of the trumpet offered new advantages. The trumpet, possessing a more cylindrical bore and flaring bell, naturally produces a brighter, more brilliant and penetrating sound. It offers greater projection and a more cutting edge, qualities that were becoming increasingly valuable as jazz moved into larger venues and as soloists began to demand more sonic space within an ensemble. For Armstrong, whose playing was already marked by its clarity, power, and high-note brilliance, the trumpet provided an instrument that could more effectively convey the soaring, declarative statements that characterized his mature style. This transition was a deliberate choice, reflecting Armstrong's continuous pursuit of musical excellence and his responsiveness to the changing landscape of jazz. The trumpet allowed him to articulate his innovative ideas with even greater force and clarity. Its enhanced projection meant that his solos could cut through the full sound of a big band with ease, commanding attention and ensuring that every nuance of his improvisations was heard. The brighter timbre also complemented the increasingly virtuosic and dramatic nature of his playing, allowing his high notes to ring out with even more dazzling intensity. The adoption of the trumpet further solidified Armstrong's role as a groundbreaking soloist. It enabled him to develop the heroic, commanding sound that would become synonymous with his name. This instrumental evolution was not about abandoning his cornet roots, but rather about finding the optimal vehicle for his ever-expanding musical genius. The trumpet became an extension of his voice, allowing him to communicate his powerful emotions and sophisticated musical ideas with an unparalleled brilliance and authority that would define the sound of jazz for generations to come. Following his transformative period in Chicago with the Hot Fives and Sevens, and having refined his instrumental voice on the trumpet, Louis Armstrong found himself drawn back to the vibrant energy of New York City in the late 1920s. This return marked a new chapter, one in which his burgeoning fame began to translate into widespread public recognition, particularly in iconic venues that served as cultural epicenters for jazz and dance. Among these, the Savoy Ballroom stood as a beacon in Harlem, a grand hall renowned for its sprawling dance floor and its capacity to host thousands of patrons. It was here that Armstrong, no longer merely a sideman or a recording sensation, but a star in his own right, began to regularly perform. His engagements at the Savoy were momentous events, drawing immense crowds eager to witness the man whose recordings had already reshaped the sound of jazz. At the Savoy, Armstrong's performances transcended mere musical execution. They were spectacles of charisma and unparalleled talent. He possessed an innate ability to connect with an audience, not just through the profound beauty and technical brilliance of his trumpet playing, but also through his engaging stage presence. His wide, infectious smile, his playful vocal asides, and the sheer joy he exuded while performing created an electric atmosphere that captivated listeners and dancers alike. The sheer scale of the Savoy Ballroom, designed to accommodate a throng, provided the perfect stage for Armstrong's expanding showmanship. His trumpet, now fully embraced, allowed his powerful and clear tone to fill the vast space, reaching every corner of the hall. People came not only to dance to his music, but to marvel at his solos, to hear his innovative scat singing lave, and to experience the raw, authentic energy that radiated from him. These engagements at the Savoy Ballroom were crucial in cementing Armstrong's status as a bona fide entertainer and a major cultural figure. He demonstrated a unique capacity to bridge the gap between pure musical artistry and popular appeal. His performances were a testament to his growing command over both his instrument and his audience, showcasing a blend of virtuosic improvisation and engaging showmanship that was irresistible. The Savoy Ballroom became a crucible where Armstrong's live presence transformed his recorded innovations into a communal, exhilarating experience, further propelling his journey toward global recognition. As the 1930s dawned, Louis Armstrong's star continued its ascent, moving beyond the confines of the recording studio and the dance hall. His magnetic personality and undeniable talent began to attract the attention of a burgeoning new medium, talking pictures. This led to his first significant foray into Hollywood with the 1930 film X-Flame. For a black musician during this particular era, appearing in a major motion picture, even in a supporting capacity, was a moment of considerable historical significance. The motion picture industry of the early 20th century was largely segregated, and roles for black actors and musicians were exceptionally scarce, often limited to stereotypical portrayals. Armstrong's presence on the silver screen, therefore, represented a quiet but profound breakthrough, allowing his image and his music to reach an even broader national and international audience. In X-Flame, Armstrong did not play a central character in the narrative, but rather appeared as himself, or a version thereof, performing a musical number. This type of cameo, while not fully integrating him into the film's main plot, nonetheless showcased his unique gifts to viewers who might never have had the opportunity to see him perform live in a ballroom or a nightclub. The film allowed millions to witness his captivating smile, his dynamic trumpet playing, and the sheer charisma that had already made him a legend in the jazz world. Despite the inherent limitations and the prevailing racial stereotypes of the time, years which often relegated black performers to roles that reinforced existing prejudices, Armstrong's appearance in X-Flame was a step forward. It placed a black artist of extraordinary talent in a mainstream production, offering a glimpse of his genius to audiences who were perhaps unfamiliar with the vibrant cultural landscape of Harlem or Chicago. His segment, brief as it may have been, injected a dose of authentic musical artistry into the film. The significance lay not just in the performance itself, but in the precedent it set. It demonstrated that Armstrong's appeal transcended racial boundaries and artistic genres. While the cinematic landscape would remain challenging for black artists for many decades, X-Flame marked Armstrong's initial step onto a global stage that extended far beyond the realm of music. It was a testament to his undeniable star power that Hollywood, ever in search of compelling talent, recognized his unique ability to captivate an audience, even within the constrained framework of the era's racial politics. This debut, however modest, foreshadowed a much larger presence for Armstrong in film throughout his career. As the early 1930s unfolded, Louis Armstrong's fame, already considerable within the United States, began to stretch across the Atlantic. Europe, which had long been captivated by American jazz, was eager to embrace this new icon of the burgeoning musical form. Armstrong embarked on a series of tours that would transform him into a truly international sensation, demonstrating the universal appeal of his artistry. His first major European tour commenced in 1932, bringing him to London, a city already buzzing with anticipation. The reception he received was nothing short of enthusiastic. Audiences, composed of both ardent jazz aficionados and curious newcomers, were captivated by his electrifying trumpet playing, his unique vocalizations, and his engaging stage presence. The British press, while occasionally puzzled by the raw energy of jazz, largely lauded his virtuosity and charisma. He performed in prestigious venues, his music echoing through halls where jazz had perhaps never before been heard with such intensity. Following his successful British engagements, Armstrong extended his reach to continental Europe. He performed in Paris, a city renowned for its artistic sensibilities and its embrace of cultural innovation. The French audiences, known for their discerning tastes, warmly welcomed Armstrong. His music resonated deeply, transcending linguistic barriers and cultural differences. He was seen not merely as an entertainer, but as an ambassador of a vibrant new art form, an innovator who was pushing the boundaries of musical expression. Throughout these early European tours, Armstrong found himself in a slightly different cultural environment than in his homeland. While racial prejudice was not absent, the specific and pervasive forms of segregation and discrimination he routinely faced in the United States were often less overt or manifested differently. This offered him a sense of artistic freedom and personal dignity that was, at times, a welcome respite. He was celebrated primarily for his immense talent, rather than being defined by his race. These tours were a profound experience of cultural exchange. Armstrong introduced European audiences to the authentic sound and spirit of American jazz, a sound that was at once sophisticated and profoundly rooted in a rich cultural heritage. In return, he absorbed new perspectives and found renewed inspiration in the enthusiastic appreciation he encountered. The experience solidified his status as a global artist, demonstrating that his music spoke a universal language. He returned to America not just as a jazz star, but as an internationally acclaimed figure, his reputation having been significantly amplified by his triumphant crossings of the Atlantic. The year 1935 marked a significant turning point in Louis Armstrong's professional life, a moment that would shape the trajectory of his career for decades to come. It was in this year that he forged a partnership with Joe Glazer, a figure who would become his manager, confidant and protector for the remainder of Armstrong's active performing life. Glazer's arrival brought a much-needed stability and strategic vision to Armstrong's often tumultuous career. Prior to Glazer, Armstrong had experienced a succession of managers, some of whom had not always acted in his best financial or artistic interests. The music industry of the 1920s and early 1930s was a complex and often predatory landscape, particularly for black artists who frequently faced exploitation and systemic discrimination. Armstrong, with his genial nature and focus on his music, was not always adept at navigating the intricate business dealings and contractual obligations that came with his growing fame. Joe Glazer was a different kind of manager. A shrewd and formidable individual with deep connections within the entertainment world, Glazer quickly took charge, bringing order and direction to Armstrong's business affairs. He was known for his tough negotiating skills and his fierce loyalty to his clients. For Armstrong, this meant a manager who was willing to fight for better contracts, secure more prominent engagements, and ensure that his artist received fair compensation for his immense talent. Glazer's role extended beyond mere financial management. He understood the unique challenges faced by a black superstar in a racially segregated America. He worked tirelessly to protect Armstrong from the most egregious forms of discrimination, carefully choosing venues and tours that would minimize exposure to overt racism, while still maximizing Armstrong's visibility and income, where he orchestrated Armstrong's public image, steering him toward a broader audience and away from the more limited confines of the jazz club circuit. Under Glazer's guidance, Armstrong's career entered a period of unprecedented expansion and financial security. Glazer meticulously planned his recording sessions, film appearances, and international tours, ensuring that Armstrong remained at the forefront of popular music. This long-standing partnership, built on a foundation of trust and mutual benefit, allowed Armstrong to focus primarily on his artistry, knowing that his business interests were being diligently safeguarded by a manager who was both powerful and deeply committed to his success. It was a relationship that would endure for over 3 decades, and was profoundly influencing how Louis Armstrong presented himself to the world and how his legacy was built. As the 1930s progressed, the musical landscape of America began to shift, moving away from the smaller ensemble jazz that Armstrong had pioneered and toward the expansive sounds of the big band era. Swing music, characterized by its driving rhythm sections and sophisticated arrangements for multiple horns, became the dominant popular music form. For many artists, this change presented a challenge, demanding adaptation or risking obsolescence. Louis Armstrong, ever the innovator, met this evolution with characteristic grace and musical intelligence. He understood that to remain at the pinnacle of popular entertainment, he needed to adjust his presentation. While his singular trumpet voice and charismatic vocals remained central, the backdrop against which they were presented needed to expand. Armstrong began leading his own big bands, a necessary evolution to compete in this new environment. These were not merely backing groups, they were well-drilled ensembles capable of delivering the intricate arrangements that defined the swing era. Under Armstrong's leadership, his big bands played a repertoire that blended his established hits with contemporary swing numbers. He embraced the larger orchestral format, finding new ways to integrate his powerful trumpet solos and distinctive vocal style within the richer textures of a full ensemble. His bands featured talented musicians, and while the focus remained squarely on Armstrong, the collective sound was robust and infectious, designed to get audiences dancing. This adaptation was crucial for his continued relevance. While some purists might have preferred his earlier, more intimate Hot 5 and Hot 7 recordings, the public's appetite for big band swing was undeniable. Armstrong's ability to front a big band demonstrated his versatility and his keen awareness of prevailing musical tastes. He wasn't simply a relic of an earlier jazz style. He was a dynamic performer capable of leading a modern swing orchestra. His command over these larger ensembles solidified his status not just as a jazz innovator, but as a mainstream entertainer. He appeared in films and on radio with his big bands, reaching an even wider audience. This period showcased Armstrong's remarkable capacity to evolve without sacrificing the core elements of his unique musical identity. He remained the singular voice of the trumpet and the gravelly, charming vocalist, but now he was framed by the grand, irresistible sound of a full swing orchestra, ensuring his continued success through one of music's most vibrant and competitive periods. Despite his soaring international fame and the widespread adoration for his musical genius, Louis Armstrong, like all African Americans in mid-20th century America, was confronted daily with the harsh realities of racial discrimination and segregation. The triumphs of his performances and recordings often stood in stark contrast to the indignities he endured off stage, particularly when touring across the United States. Life on the road for a black musician, even one of Armstrong's stature, was a constant negotiation of racial barriers. While he might headline prestigious venues and draw massive crowds of both black and white patrons, the moment the performance concluded, the rules of Jim Crow society reasserted themselves. Finding suitable accommodation was a perpetual challenge. Hotels that welcomed white travellers often refused service to black artists, forcing Armstrong and his band to seek lodging in segregated boarding houses, private homes, or establishments specifically catering to black clientele. These were frequently less comfortable, less secure, and located in less desirable areas. Dining was another hurdle. Restaurants, Even those in proximity to the venues where Armstrong performed would often deny him service. Meals were frequently taken in kitchens, back entrances, or on the tour bus. The simple act of travelling itself was fraught with complications. Buses and trains enforced strict segregation, mandating separate sections for black passengers, often less comfortable and less private. Filling stations, rest stops, and public facilities presented similar barriers, forcing black travellers to carry food, water, and make careful plans to avoid humiliating encounters. The psychological toll of these constant reminders of his perceived inferiority, despite his immense talent and contribution to American culture, must have been profound. Yet, Armstrong navigated these challenges with a remarkable degree of stoicism and an unwavering commitment to his music. His manager, Joe Glazer, while effective in many aspects, could not entirely shield him from the pervasive racism of the era. Glazer, being white, could enter places Armstrong could not, an uncomfortable paradox that highlighted the deep inequities. Armstrong's resilience in the face of such systemic injustice was a testament to his strength of character. He channeled his energy into his art, using his music as a universal language that transcended racial divides, even as he personally experienced their painful reality. His success, achieved despite these formidable obstacles, underscored not only his extraordinary talent, but also the profound injustices that permeated American society, even for its most celebrated figures. His story on the road was a microcosm of the larger struggle for civil rights, played out against a backdrop of unparalleled musical brilliance. The 1930s and 1940s marked a pivotal era for mass media, and Louis Armstrong was perfectly positioned to leverage these new technologies to expand his reach far beyond the confines of concert halls and nightclubs. Radio, in particular, became a powerful conduit for his music and his magnetic personality, then bringing his unique sound directly into millions of homes across America and eventually the world. As radio became a staple of daily life, Armstrong's presence on the airwaves grew steadily. His big band performances were broadcast live from dance halls and theatres, allowing listeners to experience the energy and improvisation of his shows without being physically present. Furthermore, he became a regular guest on popular variety programs and musical showcases, where his trumpet artistry and distinctive vocal delivery charmed audiences. These broadcasts were instrumental in cementing his status, not only as a jazz innovator, but as a beloved entertainer whose appeal transcended musical genres. The warmth of his voice, his infectious laugh, and his clear, expressive trumpet playing translated beautifully over the air, creating an intimate connection with listeners. Concurrently, his recording career continued to flourish, building upon the foundational innovations of his Hot Fives and Sevens. Throughout the 1930s and 40s, Armstrong signed with major labels, releasing a steady stream of records that captured his evolving style. These recordings documented his transition to big band leadership, showcasing his interpretations of popular tunes and his continued mastery of the trumpet. Each new record served as a tangible piece of his artistry, distributed through a growing network of record stores, making his music accessible to a vast consumer base. The synergy between radio play and record sales was undeniable. A song heard on the radio would often drive listeners to purchase the corresponding record, eager to own a piece of the magic. This dual presence allowed Armstrong to penetrate markets that live performances alone could not reach. His music became a soundtrack to everyday life for many, from bustling urban centres to quiet rural towns. His recordings from this period, encompassing a wide range of material from swing numbers to poignant ballads, further solidified his reputation as a versatile and enduring musical force. They preserved his improvisational genius and showcased his ability to infuse any melody with his unmistakable personal touch. Through the omnipresence of radio and the tangible legacy of his records, Louis Armstrong's voice and trumpet became intimately familiar to an unprecedented global audience, ensuring his place as one of the most recognized and influential musicians of his time. While Louis Armstrong's foundational genius lay in his trumpet playing, his enduring appeal and widespread fame stemmed significantly from his evolution into a complete entertainer. This transformation allowed him to transcend the boundaries of purely instrumental jazz, drawing in audiences who might not have considered themselves jazz aficionados. His journey from a virtuosic musician to a beloved showman was gradual, but by the mid-20th century, his stage presence, humour, and distinctive vocal style were as celebrated as his horn work. Armstrong possessed an innate ability to connect with people, a quality that radiated from him whether on stage, in front of a microphone, or even in casual conversation. His smile was legendary, a broad, genuine expression that instantly put people at ease. This warmth was a crucial component of his charisma. He understood the power of an engaging performance, not just technically brilliant execution. His humour was another cornerstone of his expanded appeal. Armstrong had natural wit, often interspersing his musical numbers with light-hearted banter, anecdotes, and a characteristic chuckle that became almost as famous as his trumpet solos. He would playfully interact with his band members and the audience, creating an atmosphere of joy and shared experience. This light-heartedness was a deliberate choice, a way to break down barriers and make his sophisticated music accessible and enjoyable for everyone. He was not merely presenting music, he was sharing a part of himself. Furthermore, his singing became an increasingly prominent feature of his act. While initially known for his revolutionary scat singing in the 1920s, his vocal style matured into a gravelly, expressive delivery that was deeply soulful and instantly recognizable. He approached a song with the same improvisational spirit as he did a trumpet solo, bending notes, altering rhythms, and infusing lyrics with profound personal feeling. His voice, much like his horn, told a story. He could imbue a simple pop tune with a depth of emotion that elevated it beyond its original form. This comprehensive approach to entertainment allowed Armstrong to appeal to a broader demographic than many of his jazz contemporaries. He wasn't just a musician for musicians, he was an entertainer for the masses. His performances were a full sensory experience, combining unparalleled musical talent with engaging showmanship, genuine humour, and a captivating personality. This blend ensured that even those unfamiliar with the intricacies of jazz improvisation could find immense pleasure in his artistry. He skillfully cultivated an image that was both sophisticated and approachable, a master of his craft who never lost touch with the common touch. His transformation was key to his enduring legacy, proving that true artistry could be both profound and universally engaging. By the mid-1940s, the landscape of popular music was shifting once more. The era of the big bands, which had provided Louis Armstrong with a consistent platform for over a decade, was beginning to wane. Economic pressures, changing tastes, and the rise of new musical forms meant that the large ensembles were becoming increasingly difficult and expensive to maintain. For Armstrong, this period presented a new challenge, but also an opportunity for artistic renewal. In 1947, a pivotal decision was made that would redefine the latter half of his career, the formation of Louis Armstrong and his All-Stars. This new ensemble marked a significant departure from the large orchestras he had been leading. It was a smaller group, typically a sextet or septet, allowing for a more intimate and improvisational musical environment. This change was not merely a practical adjustment to economic realities. It was a deliberate and deeply satisfying return to the foundational principles of New Orleans jazz. The All-Stars format allowed Armstrong to shed the more structured arrangements often necessitated by big bands. he could embrace the spontaneous collective improvisation that had defined his earliest days in New Orleans. The smaller lineup fostered a conversational interplay between the musicians, a freedom and flexibility that was exhilarating for both Armstrong and his audiences. It was a return to the roots of jazz, where individual voices could shine within a cohesive, swinging whole. The personnel of the All-Stars were carefully chosen, often featuring seasoned jazz veterans who shared Armstrong's deep understanding of the music. Musicians like trombonist Jack Teagarden, clarinetist Barney Bigard, pianist Earl Hines, and bassist Arvell Shaw, among others, brought their own considerable talents to the group. These were artists who understood the subtleties of traditional jazz, capable of both contributing strong solos and providing sympathetic accompaniment. This synergy within the group was palpable, creating a vibrant and dynamic sound. This shift revitalized Armstrong's career. The public, and indeed many critics, embraced the All-Stars with enthusiasm. It was a sound that resonated with nostalgia for the golden age of jazz, yet delivered with a freshness and vitality that was unmistakably Armstrong's. The smaller group allowed his trumpet to cut through with even greater clarity and brilliance, and his vocals, now a central part of his act, could be delivered with an intimate directness. The All-Stars became the vehicle through which Armstrong would tour the world extensively for the next 2 decades, becoming one of America's most beloved cultural ambassadors. This return to a more traditional small group jazz format proved to be a masterful stroke, affirming his enduring connection to the music's origins while continuing to captivate new generations of listeners, and it solidified his image not just as an innovator, but as a timeless embodiment of jazz itself. As the Cold War intensified in the mid-20th century, the United States government sought new avenues for projecting its image and values across the globe. Amidst ideological battles and geopolitical tensions, cultural exchange emerged as a powerful non-military tool of diplomacy. It was within this context that Louis Armstrong, already a global icon with his newly formed All-Stars, stepped into a unique and influential role. He became known as Ambassador Satch, a moniker that perfectly encapsulated his unofficial yet profound diplomatic mission. Beginning in the late 1950s, Armstrong embarked on a series of extensive international tours sponsored in part by the US State Department. These were not merely concert engagements, i.e. they were carefully orchestrated cultural missions designed to foster goodwill and present a positive image of American culture to nations around the world, particularly those unaligned in the Cold War struggle. The choice of Armstrong for this role was both logical and inspired. His music transcended language barriers, and his warm, charismatic personality was universally appealing. The tours took Armstrong and his All-Stars to an astonishing array of countries across Africa, Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. From Ghana to Japan, from the Congo to Czechoslovakia, Armstrong performed for diverse audiences, often in places where American popular culture had little prior penetration. His concerts were met with overwhelming enthusiasm, drawing crowds that often numbered in the tens of thousands. People from all walks of life, regardless of their political leanings or cultural backgrounds, were captivated by his music and his genuine, joyful presence. The cultural diplomacy aspect of these tours was multifaceted. At a time when the Soviet Union was promoting its own cultural achievements, the United States aimed to showcase its vibrant artistic freedom and diversity. Armstrong, an African-American artist who had risen from poverty to international stardom, embodied a complex narrative about American society. While the reality of racial discrimination at home was undeniable and often highlighted by Cold War adversaries, Armstrong's global acceptance and the joy he brought represented a hopeful, aspirational vision of American ideals. He met with heads of state, performed for royalty, and engaged with local musicians and communities, always with his characteristic humility and humour. his presence often overshadowed official diplomatic rhetoric, creating a direct human connection that formal negotiations sometimes failed to achieve. He was a living testament to the power of music as a universal language, capable of bridging divides and fostering mutual understanding. These tours were not without their challenges, including the logistical complexities of travel and the persistent struggle against racial prejudice that Armstrong still encountered, even as an international dignitary. Yet, through it all, he remained a steadfast and immensely effective cultural ambassador. His trumpet and his voice became instruments of peace and goodwill, projecting a message of joy and shared humanity across continents, and demonstrating the profound impact that music could have on the global stage during a period of intense ideological competition. The vast scope of Louis Armstrong's travels as a cultural ambassador was truly remarkable. His journeys took him across continents, from the bustling cities of Europe to the emerging nations of Africa and the ancient cultures of Asia. Each destination presented a unique audience, yet the reception was consistently one of profound appreciation and joy. In Ghana, thousands gathered to welcome him, celebrating his arrival as a hero. In the Congo, he played for audiences eager for a taste of American culture, and in countries like Czechoslovakia, his music offered a subtle counterpoint to the prevailing political narratives, a breath of artistic freedom. Armstrong's genius lay not only in his musical prowess, but in his ability to communicate beyond words. His trumpet solos, filled with intricate melodies and powerful improvisations, spoke a universal language of emotion and artistry. His gravelly voice, even when singing in English, conveyed a warmth and authenticity that resonated deeply with listeners regardless of their native tongue. The infectious joy emanating from his performances transcended linguistic barriers, fostering an immediate connection that was both personal and profound. This capacity to transcend cultural differences was precisely what made him such an invaluable asset in the realm of international relations. At a time when the United States was striving to win hearts and minds in the global arena, Armstrong presented an image of America that was vibrant, accessible, and deeply human. He was a powerful symbol of American artistic expression, showcasing a rich cultural heritage that extended beyond political ideologies. This positive portrayal was particularly significant given the concurrent realities of racial segregation and discrimination within the United States. While the nation grappled with its own internal struggles for civil rights, Armstrong's global tours offered a different narrative. His dignified presence, his immense talent, and the universal adoration he received demonstrated a potential for harmony and respect that belied the stark divisions at home. He became, in effect, a living example of American ideals, even as those ideals were still being fought for on domestic soil. His interactions with local musicians, dignitaries, and everyday citizens were always characterized by genuine warmth and respect. He would often engage in impromptu jam sessions, sharing his knowledge and soaking in the sounds of other cultures. These exchanges built bridges of understanding, creating moments of shared humanity that transcended the formal boundaries of diplomacy. Through his music and his spirit, Louis Armstrong forged connections that endured, leaving a lasting legacy of goodwill and demonstrating the enduring power of culture to shape international perceptions. In 1957, a moment arrived that compelled Louis Armstrong to take a profoundly public and controversial stand. The unfolding crisis in Little Rock, Arkansas, where 9 African American students faced violent resistance in their attempt to integrate Central High School, deeply disturbed him. This national spectacle, broadcast across the world, contradicted the very image of America that Armstrong had been projecting abroad as a cultural ambassador. The images of the Little Rock Nine, surrounded by an angry mob and blocked by the Arkansas National Guard, presented a stark and painful reality. Governor Orville Forbes's defiance of federal desegregation orders and President Dwight D. Eisenhower's initial perceived inaction left Armstrong feeling betrayed and disillusioned. He had long believed in the power of music to bridge divides and had accepted his role in cultural diplomacy with a sincere hope for a more unified world. However, the events in Little Rock exposed a deep hypocrisy that he could no longer silently tolerate. Armstrong's response was swift and unequivocal. He publicly condemned Governor Forbes, calling him a no-good son of a bitch. More significantly, he directed sharp criticism towards President Eisenhower, stating that the president was two-faced and lacked the courage to enforce civil rights. These were not casual remarks. They were powerful pronouncements from a figure of immense global renown, a man who had largely avoided overt political statements throughout his career. The most impactful demonstration of his protest came with his decision to cancel a planned State Department-sponsored tour of the Soviet Union. This tour was intended to be a crucial component of America's Cold War strategy, showcasing the nation's cultural vibrancy and democratic ideals. By refusing to participate, Armstrong sent an unmistakable message. He declared that he could not represent a government that allowed such injustices to persist within its own borders. "The way they're treating my people in the South, the government can go to hell," he stated, his words echoing with a rare and potent anger. This act was not without personal cost. His manager, Joe Glazer, was reportedly furious, fearing the commercial repercussions and the potential alienation of conservative audiences. Yet, Armstrong remained resolute. His moral conviction outweighed any professional considerations. He understood that his voice, amplified by his international stature, carried a weight that few others could command. His courageous stance on the Little Rock Nine crisis revealed a man who, despite his outwardly jovial persona, possessed a profound sense of justice and an unwavering commitment to human dignity, even when it meant challenging the very institutions he had previously served. Louis Armstrong's public denouncement of the Little Rock crisis in 1957 marked a pivotal, if often understated, moment in his engagement with the burgeoning civil rights movement. While his primary mode of activism was his music itself, and his presence as a dignified black artist on global stages, this specific incident peeled back layers of his public persona to reveal a deeply held conviction for racial justice. Prior to Little Rock, Armstrong's approach to racial discrimination was typically expressed through endurance, quiet defiance, and the sheer excellence of his artistry. He navigated segregated venues, hostile audiences, and demeaning situations with a remarkable grace, choosing to elevate his music rather than engage in direct confrontation. This strategy, born of necessity and survival in a deeply prejudiced society, led some to criticize him as an Uncle Tom, a figure too compliant with the racial status quo. Such criticisms, however, often failed to grasp the nuanced realities of his life and the subtle yet profound ways he challenged white supremacy simply by existing as a celebrated black man. His outspokenness regarding Little Rock therefore shattered any lingering illusions of his detachment. It was a clear, unambiguous declaration that some injustices were too egregious to be met with silence or a smile. By sacrificing a lucrative and prestigious State Department tour, he used his unique global platform to draw international attention to America's internal struggles with racial equality. He understood the power of his voice, not just musically, but morally. This moment highlighted Armstrong's quiet yet firm commitment to racial equality. He was not a protest march leader, nor a firebrand orator in the mold of later civil rights figures. His activism was different. It was the activism of a cultural giant who, through his very being and occasional, carefully chosen public statements, chipped away at the foundations of prejudice. He embodied the idea that excellence, dignity, and a refusal to be diminished were potent forms of resistance. His courage in challenging President Eisenhower and Governor Faubus, despite the potential professional backlash, demonstrated a deep personal integrity. It revealed that beneath the joyful entertainer lay a man acutely aware of the systemic injustices faced by African Americans. Louis Armstrong, through his art and, at critical junctures, through his words, contributed to the moral awakening of a nation, proving that a voice for justice could emanate from unexpected, yet profoundly influential places. His legacy in the civil rights movement, though not always overt, was undeniably significant, a testament to his quiet yet powerful stand for human dignity. The relentless demands of Louis Armstrong's trumpet playing, a pursuit he embraced with unparalleled passion and dedication, inevitably took a significant toll on his physical well-being, particularly on his lips. For brass musicians, the embouchure, the precise shaping and positioning of the mouth, lips, and facial muscles against the mouthpiece is paramount. It is the very mechanism through which sound is produced, and for Armstrong, whose powerful high-register playing was a hallmark of his style, this constant exertion placed immense strain on the delicate tissues of his mouth. From early in his career, and certainly throughout his prime, Armstrong grappled with recurring lip problems. These were not minor irritations, but serious afflictions that threatened his ability to perform. The continuous pressure, vibration and friction of the mouthpiece against his lips led to a range of issues, including cuts, sores, calluses, and even small abscesses. Such conditions were not only painful, but also fundamentally compromised his embouchure, making it difficult to maintain tone, control, and endurance. The life of a touring musician offered little respite. Night after night, performance after performance, often for hours on end, Armstrong was expected to deliver his extraordinary sound. There was rarely an opportunity for prolonged rest and healing, which is often the most effective remedy for such injuries. Instead, he relied on a combination of self-care, home remedies, and, when possible, professional medical attention. He became an expert in managing his own lip health, understanding the subtle signs of impending trouble, and employing various techniques to alleviate discomfort and promote healing. One of his well-known practices was the application of bag balm, a soothing ointment typically used for cows' udders, to his lips. This unconventional remedy speaks to the lengths he would go to maintain his playing ability, utilizing whatever he found effective to soothe and protect his embouchure. He also developed a unique, almost ritualistic approach to warming up and cooling down his lips, recognizing the importance of preparing and recovering the muscles and tissues after intense playing sessions. These persistent lip problems were a constant companion throughout Armstrong's long career. They were a silent struggle, often hidden from his adoring public, but they profoundly influenced his daily life and his decisions regarding his performance schedule. They underscored the physical sacrifice inherent in his art, a testament to the sheer physical fortitude required to produce the joyful, seemingly effortless music that flowed from his trumpet. The necessity of constant care and management of his embouchure became an integral, if unfortunate, part of his professional routine, a recurring challenge he met with resilience and an unwavering commitment to his craft. Amidst the whirlwind of global tours, recording sessions, and public appearances, there remained one constant, unchanging anchor in Louis Armstrong's life: his modest home in Corona, Queens, New York. This unassuming two-story brick house, situated on a quiet residential street, was more than just an address. It was his sanctuary, a deeply personal haven from the relentless demands of fame. For nearly 3 decades, from 1943 until his passing, this house in Corona served as the quiet center of his universe. Despite his immense worldwide celebrity, Armstrong's life in Corona was remarkably grounded and unpretentious. He lived among his neighbours, many of whom were working-class families, without fanfare or ostentation. The house itself reflected this sensibility. It was comfortable and well-maintained, but not extravagant. It was a place where he could simply be Louis, not Satchmo or Pops, but a respected and beloved member of his community. The neighbourhood provided a sense of stability and normalcy that was often absent from his professional life. Here he could relax, tend to his garden, and interact with the people who knew him not just as a musical legend, but as a friendly face on the block. Children would often gather outside his home, hoping for a glimpse of the famous musician, and Armstrong, known for his generosity and warmth, would frequently oblige, sometimes even sharing stories or a friendly wave. His wife, Lucille, played a crucial role in cultivating this stable environment. She created a welcoming and comfortable home, managing the household affairs and providing the domestic tranquility that allowed Armstrong to rejuvenate between his demanding schedules. The home was a repository of his life's memories, filled with his personal effects, photographs, and the countless recordings that chronicled his unparalleled career. This quiet existence in Corona stood in gentle contrast to the dazzling stages and grand venues he frequented around the world. It was a place where the noise of the global spotlight faded, replaced by the sounds of everyday life. Children playing, neighbours chatting, and the gentle hum of a residential street. The fact that he chose to remain in this community, rather than retreat to a more secluded or opulent estate, speaks volumes about his character. It underscored his deep connection to the ordinary, to the roots that kept him firmly planted even as his music soared to extraordinary heights. His home in Corona was, in essence, a testament to his enduring humility and his profound appreciation for a life lived simply and authentically, surrounded by the familiar embrace of his community. In the year 1967, a song emerged that would, quite unexpectedly, become one of Louis Armstrong's most enduring and universally cherished recordings. This was What a Wonderful World, a composition that, despite its initial reception in his home country, found an extraordinary resonance with audiences across the globe. At a time of social unrest and global tension, the song offered a poignant message of hope and appreciation for the simple beauties of life, delivered through Armstrong's distinctive, gravelly voice. The recording of What a Wonderful World took place in New York City, produced by Bob Thiele, with arrangements by George David Weiss. Armstrong's performance was imbued with a profound sincerity and warmth, his vocal delivery conveying a deep sense of peace and optimism. The lyrics painted vivid images of green trees, red roses, blue skies, and the innocent faces of children, all seen through the eyes of someone who had witnessed much of the world's complexity, yet still found profound beauty within it. Despite the song's intrinsic charm and Armstrong's heartfelt rendition, its initial release in the United States by ABC Records was met with a rather muted response. The label's president, Larry Newton, reportedly disliked the song and did little to promote it, leading to very low sales and airplay in America. This lack of enthusiasm from his own record company was a peculiar turn of events for an artist of Armstrong's stature, especially given the song's immediate and powerful impact elsewhere. However, a different story unfolded across the Atlantic. In the United Kingdom, What a Wonderful World achieved immense popularity, quickly climbing to the top of the singles chart. Its success in Britain was swift and undeniable, captivating listeners with its gentle melody and uplifting message. From there, its appeal spread to other countries, finding a receptive audience in various parts of Europe and beyond. The song's universal themes transcended cultural and linguistic barriers, speaking directly to the human spirit's capacity for wonder and hope. Over time, What a Wonderful World would grow to become a global phenomenon, and cementing its place as one of the most iconic songs in Armstrong's vast repertoire. Its message resonated not just in 1967, but continued to do so for decades, particularly through its inclusion in films and television, which introduced it to new generations. It transformed from an overlooked American release into a worldwide anthem of peace and appreciation, a testament to the enduring power of Armstrong's artistry to convey profound emotion and connect with the deepest parts of the human experience. This late career hit proved that even after decades of innovation and fame, Louis Armstrong still possessed the unique ability to touch hearts and inspire millions with a simple yet profoundly beautiful musical statement. In the spring of 1964, a remarkable event unfolded in the world of popular music, and demonstrating Louis Armstrong's enduring appeal and his surprising ability to connect with new generations. At the age of 63, an age when many artists might be contemplating retirement, Armstrong achieved a feat that few could have predicted. He scored a #1 hit on the Billboard Hot 100 chart with his recording of Hello Dolly. This success was astonishing, particularly because it allowed Armstrong to dislodge the Beatles from the top spot, a group that had, at that time, dominated the American music scene with an almost unprecedented fervour. For an artist whose career had spanned decades, whose roots were in early jazz, to outsell and outrank the reigning titans of pop music was a testament to his unique artistry and timeless charm. The song Hello Dolly originated from the Broadway musical of the same name, composed by Jerry Herman. Armstrong had been invited to record a song from the show as a promotional tool, a common practice in the music industry. What began as a simple recording session, however, quickly evolved into something far grander. His warm, gravelly voice, infused with an unmistakable joy and a playful swing, brought the tune to life in a way that captured the public's imagination. The recording session itself was reportedly a casual affair, with Armstrong delivering his lines with characteristic spontaneity and good humour. His interpretation of the song was not merely a vocal performance, it was an embodiment of his persona, charming, joyful, and utterly captivating. The track was released as a single, and almost immediately it began its ascent. The impact of Hello Dolly was profound. It reintroduced Louis Armstrong to a mainstream audience that might have primarily known him as a historical figure rather than a contemporary chart topper. It showcased his adaptability, his willingness to embrace new material, and his intrinsic musicality that transcended genre and era. This #1 hit reaffirmed his status not just as a pioneer of jazz, but as a beloved entertainer whose appeal was universal and unyielding. It was a powerful reminder that true artistry knows no age or musical boundary, and that Louis Armstrong, even in his 7th decade, still possessed the magic to enchant the entire world. Even as his recording career continued to flourish with unexpected triumphs like Hello Dolly, Louis Armstrong maintained a visible and cherished presence across various forms of media, particularly in film and television. His unique charisma and instantly recognizable voice made him a natural fit for the screen, allowing him to reach audiences far beyond the concert halls and jazz clubs. Throughout his later career, Armstrong appeared in a number of films, often playing himself or a character closely aligned with his public persona. These roles frequently showcased his musical talents and his genial disposition. One notable appearance was in the 1969 film Hello Dolly, where he reprised his connection to the musical, albeit in a cameo role. His rendition of the title song in the movie, performed alongside Barbra Streisand, served as a delightful nod to his recent chart success, and further cemented his association with the popular tune. Beyond feature films, Armstrong was a frequent and welcome guest on numerous television programs. From variety shows to talk shows, his appearances were always met with enthusiasm. His warm smile, the twinkle in his eye, and his distinctive vocal delivery made him an engaging personality who could effortlessly charm viewers of all ages. These television spots were crucial in keeping him relevant and accessible in an ever-changing media landscape. They allowed new generations who might not have been familiar with his early jazz recordings to discover his talent and infectious joy. His ability to project warmth and authenticity through the camera lens was remarkable. Whether he was performing a beloved standard, sharing an anecdote, or simply offering a good-natured laugh, Armstrong's presence on screen was always genuine. He never seemed to be playing a role, he simply was Louis Armstrong. And that was more than enough to captivate an audience. These continued forays into film and television were not merely contractual obligations, they were extensions of his role as a cultural ambassador. Through these visual mediums, Armstrong transcended the boundaries of music, becoming a beloved public figure whose image and sound were synonymous with joy and goodwill. His consistent visibility ensured that his legacy was not confined to historical recordings, but remained alive and vibrant in the collective consciousness, bridging the gap between his pioneering past and his enduring contemporary appeal. His screen presence, much like his music, possessed a timeless quality that resonated deeply with a diverse and expansive viewership. Beyond his unparalleled musical genius, Louis Armstrong cultivated a distinctive public persona, affectionately known as Satchmo, that became as iconic as his trumpet playing. This persona, characterized by his gravelly voice, the ever-present white handkerchief, and an infectious, wide smile, was more than just a stage presence. It was a carefully developed and highly effective means of navigating the complex social and racial landscapes of his time. The name Satchmo itself, a contraction of satchel mouth, was an early nickname that he embraced. It spoke to the expansive way he played the trumpet, but over time it came to embody his entire public image. His voice, naturally raspy, became a signature element of his vocal performances, adding warmth and character to every lyric. The handkerchief, often seen mopping his brow during energetic performances, became a symbol of his hard work and his relatable humanity. And the smile, perhaps his most potent visual trademark, conveyed an unbridled joy that was utterly contagious. While this persona was universally endearing to many, it was not without its critics. Some observers, particularly within the black intellectual and artistic communities of later decades, viewed Satchmo as a perpetuation of stereotypical happy Negro imagery, suggesting that Armstrong, in his desire to appeal to white audiences, played the role of a clown. This critique often arose from a misunderstanding of the immense pressures and limited options available to black entertainers in the segregated era. However, a deeper understanding reveals that Armstrong's Satchmo was a sophisticated and strategic creation. In an age of pervasive racial prejudice, where black men were often viewed with suspicion or hostility, Armstrong's joyful and non-threatening demeanour served as a powerful shield and a bridge. His smile disarmed, his humour charmed, and his apparent geniality opened doors that might otherwise have remained closed. It allowed him to connect with diverse audiences globally, fostering goodwill and acceptance through entertainment rather than overt confrontation. This carefully calibrated persona was a testament to Armstrong's intelligence and his deep understanding of human nature and societal dynamics. He understood that by presenting himself as a figure of universal delight, he could subtly subvert expectations and gain access to platforms where his profound artistry could be showcased. Far from being a simple act, the Satchmo persona was a masterful performance of resilience and diplomacy, enabling Louis Armstrong to transcend racial barriers and become one of the most beloved and enduring figures of the 20th century. His enduring image was a testament to his ability to find a path forward with dignity and immense charm. Throughout his remarkable career, Louis Armstrong was defined by an almost ceaseless dedication to performance, maintaining a touring schedule that would exhaust many younger musicians. From the early days in New Orleans riverboats to the grand stages of international concert halls, his life was a testament to the road. This constant movement was not merely a means to an end, but a fundamental aspect of his being, driven by an unwavering love for his craft and a profound connection to his audience. His commitment to performing was legendary. Armstrong would often play hundreds of dates a year, traversing continents with his band, enduring the rigours of travel and adapting to countless new venues. This relentless pace, while physically demanding, seemed to fuel his spirit. He viewed each performance as an opportunity to share his music, to spread joy, and to connect with people on a deeply human level. The energy he exuded on stage, the powerful trumpet solos, and the warmth of his vocal delivery were all products of this profound dedication. The physical toll of such a demanding schedule was considerable. Years of playing the trumpet contributed to chronic lip problems, and the constant travel meant irregular sleep and meals. Yet, Armstrong rarely complained. He embraced the life of a touring musician with a pragmatic acceptance and an enduring sense of purpose. For him, the stage was a sanctuary, like a place where he could fully express himself and where the immediate feedback from a live audience provided immense satisfaction. His work ethic was unparalleled. Armstrong was known for his punctuality, his professionalism, and his genuine desire to give every audience his very best. He understood the immense effort and sacrifice involved in sustaining a career of such longevity and embraced it wholeheartedly. This dedication was not merely about fulfilling contractual obligations. It stemmed from an intrinsic belief in the power of music and his role as an entertainer. The bond he forged with his audiences was reciprocal. They, in turn, adored him, drawn not only by his musical brilliance but also by his authentic warmth and his unassuming nature. Every city, every town, and every concert hall became a temporary home where he could share his gift. The constant performance, therefore, was not a burden, but a vital source of his artistic and personal fulfillment. It was the rhythm of his life, a testament to a man who lived to play and who played to live, leaving an indelible mark on every stage he graced and every heart he touched. As the 1960s drew to a close, the immense physical demands of Louis Armstrong's lifelong touring and performing began to catch up with him in more serious ways. Beyond the chronic lip issues that had plagued him for decades, new and more profound health challenges emerged, notably concerning his heart and kidneys. These ailments marked a significant turning point, gradually but inexorably impacting his ability to maintain the relentless pace that had characterized his entire career. The constant travel, the late nights, the emotional and physical exertion of countless performances all contributed to a cumulative strain on his system. By this period, Armstrong was experiencing episodes of shortness of breath and increasing fatigue. Doctors began to diagnose conditions related to his cardiovascular health, which had been under considerable pressure for many years. His heart, which had pumped with such vigour and rhythm through a lifetime of jazz, was now showing signs of wear. Kidney problems also became a growing concern. These issues added another layer of complexity to his health, requiring careful management and further restricting his activities. The combination of heart and kidney ailments meant that the demanding schedule of a global performer became increasingly unsustainable. The vibrant energy he had always projected on stage, though still present in his spirit, was becoming harder to summon physically. His medical team advised a reduction in his workload, a difficult proposition for a man whose identity was so deeply intertwined with performing. The decision to scale back tours and engagements was not made lightly, and it represented a profound adjustment for Armstrong. For decades, the road had been his home, the stage his natural habitat. Now his body was signalling a need for rest, a call that could no longer be ignored. These health setbacks were a source of frustration, yet Armstrong faced them with his characteristic resilience and a stoic acceptance. He continued to find joy in music, even when his physical capacity diminished. While the frequency of his performances lessened, the quality of his artistry remained. He adapted, finding ways to conserve energy while still delivering memorable performances. The once boundless traveller began to spend more time at his home in Corona, Queens, a place of quiet respite that now served not just as a sanctuary, but as a necessary retreat for recuperation. The challenges to his heart and kidneys marked a new chapter, one where the enduring spirit of Louis Armstrong continued to shine, even as his body began its slow, inevitable decline. The late 1960s saw Louis Armstrong entering a new, more challenging phase of his life, one marked by increasingly frequent and extended hospital stays. These periods of confinement, often due to recurring heart and kidney problems, were a stark contrast to his formerly unceasing life on the road. Yet, even within the confines of a hospital room, Armstrong's indomitable spirit and a profound desire to return to his music remained undimmed. His first major hospitalization during this period occurred in 1968, when he was admitted for heart and kidney complications. This stay was lengthy and serious, prompting widespread concern among his fans and the music community. Reports from the hospital often highlighted his struggle, but also his remarkable resolve. Even as his physical strength waned, his mind remained sharp, and his focus was consistently on recovery, on regaining enough stamina to once again stand before an audience. Friends and family observed his determination. He would practice his trumpet, albeit softly and for short periods, even from his hospital bed, a testament to his lifelong dedication. The very act of playing, even just a few notes, was a form of therapy for him, a connection to the world he loved. His wife Lucille was a constant presence, providing unwavering support and care, ensuring he followed medical advice while also nurturing his artistic spirit. Despite the gravity of his condition, Armstrong repeatedly demonstrated an almost miraculous ability to rally. There were moments when doctors expressed doubt about his recovery, only for him to surprise them with a resurgence of strength. Each time he was discharged, his immediate goal was to prepare for another performance. He saw these hospitalizations not as an end, but as temporary interruptions, obstacles to be overcome before he could once again share his gift. His return to the stage after these serious health crises was always met with immense public affection and admiration. Our audiences understood the fragility of his health, and each performance became a poignant demonstration of his enduring passion for music. Though he moved with less vigour, and his voice might have carried a slight tremble, the joy and warmth he radiated remained as potent as ever. These were years defined by a quiet bravery, as Armstrong, with dwindling physical reserves, continued to push forward, fueled by the sheer love of his art and his desire to connect with the world through his trumpet and his song. Even as his health continued its decline, Louis Armstrong's spirit for performance remained a vibrant, unwavering flame. His final public appearances, though fewer and more carefully managed, were imbued with a profound emotional weight, both for him and for the audiences who came to witness them. These were not performances of a man in his prime, but of an artist whose dedication transcended physical limitations, whose joy in music was an inextinguishable force. By 1970, his doctors had advised him against strenuous activity, but the lure of the stage, the connection with his listeners, proved too strong to resist entirely. His appearances became more selective, often requiring him to be seated, conserving his energy. Yet, when the spotlight found him, a transformation occurred. The weariness that might have shadowed him moments before seemed to dissipate, replaced by the familiar twinkle in his eye and that iconic, radiating smile. One notable late performance was his appearance on The Johnny Carson Show in December 1970. He sang the Christmas song, his voice perhaps a little rougher, a little more fragile, but imbued with an even deeper warmth and sincerity. The emotion in his delivery was palpable, a gentle, almost meditative quality that resonated deeply. He was not just singing notes, he was sharing a lifetime of experience, a profound understanding of joy and sorrow, hope and resilience. His final major public performance came shortly after, in March 1971 at the Waldorf Astoria in New York City. Despite being visibly frail, he took to the stage with the All-Stars. The trumpet solos were shorter, perhaps less technically demanding than in his youth, but each note he played was delivered with precision and heartfelt intention. His voice, in songs like Hello Dolly and What a Wonderful World, carried the weight of his journey, yet still conveyed an infectious optimism. Audiences at these final shows understood they were witnessing something precious. There was a quiet reverence in the air, a collective appreciation for the man who had given so much of himself to the world through his music. They did not come for the spectacle of his earlier years, but for the essence of Louis Armstrong, his warmth, his humanity, and his unparalleled ability to communicate pure joy. These were not just concerts. They were poignant affirmations of life, delivered by an artist whose spark, even in twilight, shone brightly, a lasting testament to his extraordinary legacy. The morning of July 6, 1971, brought a quiet conclusion to a life that had resonated with sound and joy across the globe. Louis Armstrong, the man whose trumpet had sung with such exuberance and whose voice had carried such warmth, passed away peacefully in his sleep at his beloved home in Corona, Queens, New York. He was 69 years old. The end came after a period of recurring health struggles, a quiet surrender for a spirit that had fought so valiantly to remain connected to the music and the people he cherished. The news of his passing spread swiftly, rippling across continents with a profound sense of loss. It was more than the death of a musician. It was the departure of a cultural titan, a universally recognized symbol of joy, resilience, and the unifying power of art. The world reacted with an immediate outpouring of grief and heartfelt tributes. From heads of state to fellow musicians, from everyday listeners to critical observers, statements of sorrow and admiration began to emerge, though President Richard Nixon released a statement calling Armstrong one of the architects of a truly American art form. Duke Ellington, a contemporary and fellow pioneer, expressed that Armstrong was born poor, died rich, and never hurt anyone on the way. Ella Fitzgerald, whose voice had so often intertwined with his, spoke of her deep admiration and the irreplaceable void he left. Newspapers around the world carried the news on their front pages, their headlines reflecting the magnitude of the loss. Radio stations played his iconic recordings, allowing his voice and trumpet to fill the airwaves once more, a comforting yet mournful presence. Television networks broadcast special reports, recounting his remarkable journey from the streets of New Orleans to global superstardom. The tributes highlighted not only his unparalleled musical genius, but also his profound impact as a humanitarian and a bridge builder. He had transcended racial barriers and cultural divides, his smile and his music serving as universal languages. His passing marked the end of an era, a moment when the world paused to acknowledge the immense contribution of a man who had, through sheer talent and an indomitable spirit, reshaped the landscape of music and touched countless lives. The silence that followed his final breath was a stark contrast to the vibrant symphony of his life. In the hours and days following Louis Armstrong's passing, the world collectively paused to absorb the news and reflect on the immense void left by his absence. The immediate aftermath was characterized by a wave of public mourning that transcended geographical and cultural boundaries, underscoring the truly global reach of his artistry and persona. From the highest echelons of political power to the most humble street corners where his music once played, the sentiment was uniform. A great light had dimmed. Leaders and dignitaries from various nations offered their condolences and tributes, recognizing Armstrong not merely as an entertainer, but as a significant cultural ambassador whose music had fostered understanding and goodwill across international lines. His ability to connect with diverse audiences, regardless of language or background, was a recurring theme in these official commendations. Within the jazz community, the grief was particularly acute. Musicians who had played alongside him, those he had inspired, and those who simply admired his groundbreaking innovations, spoke with reverence and sorrow. Many acknowledged his foundational role in shaping jazz itself, crediting him with elevating the trumpet to a solo instrument and defining the very essence of swing. They remembered his generosity of spirit, his unwavering dedication to his craft, and his infectious joy that permeated every note he played. Legends like Dizzy Gillespie and Miles Davis, though stylistically distinct, spoke of Armstrong with profound respect, acknowledging his towering influence on every subsequent generation of jazz artists. Beyond the formal pronouncements, the public reaction was deeply personal. For millions, Louis Armstrong was more than a distant celebrity. He was a familiar, comforting presence whose voice and smile had been a part of their lives for decades. People remembered his appearances on television, his film roles, and the sheer exhilaration of his live performances. Tributes flowed in from ordinary citizens who shared stories of how his music had uplifted them during difficult times, celebrated joyous occasions, or simply brought a moment of peace to their day. Radio stations quickly adjusted their programming, dedicating hours to his discography, allowing listeners to immerse themselves in the timeless quality of his work. Record stores reported a surge in demand for his albums, as people sought to reconnect with the enduring spirit of his music. The universal recognition of his profound impact was evident in the sheer volume and sincerity of these responses, solidifying his place not just in music history, but in the broader tapestry of human experience. The world had lost a beloved figure, but his legacy, it was clear, would continue to resonate indefinitely. The final farewell to Louis Armstrong was a dignified and deeply moving event, a testament to the profound respect and affection he commanded. His funeral service, held at the Corona Congregational Church in Queens, New York, on July 9th, 1971, was a somber gathering attended by a constellation of luminaries from the worlds of music, entertainment, and politics, alongside countless admirers. The solemnity of the occasion was palpable, a quiet acknowledgement of the immense loss. Among those who paid their respects were prominent figures like Bing Crosby, Ella Fitzgerald, Peggy Lee, and Frank Sinatra, each representing a different facet of the musical landscape that Armstrong had so profoundly influenced. Johnny Carson, the beloved late-night host, also attended, reflecting Armstrong's broad appeal beyond the jazz world. These individuals, themselves icons, stood united in their sorrow and admiration for the man who had paved so many pathways. The eulogies delivered during the service spoke not only of his musical genius, but also of his unwavering spirit, his warmth, and his profound humanity. They recounted his journey from the streets of New Orleans to global renown, emphasizing his resilience in the face of adversity and his ability to uplift spirits through his art. The atmosphere was one of quiet reflection, a collective remembrance of a life lived with passion and purpose. Following the service, Armstrong was laid to rest at Flushing Cemetery in Queens, not far from the home in Corona that had remained his anchor throughout his travels. His final resting place became a site of quiet pilgrimage for those who wished to honour his memory. In the wake of his passing and the solemnity of his funeral, Louis Armstrong's place in history was not merely confirmed but indelibly etched. His death served to solidify his standing as an undisputed foundational figure in American music, a pioneer whose innovations in jazz trumpet playing and vocal improvisation had reshaped the musical landscape. He was recognized as the architect of modern jazz, whose influence extended far beyond the genre, touching popular music, blues, and even classical forms. The narrative surrounding his life and career increasingly focused on his role as a cultural titan, a man who, through sheer talent and charisma, transcended racial barriers and became a symbol of joy and unity. His passing marked the end of an era, but it simultaneously cemented his enduring legacy as an artist of unparalleled significance, whose contributions would continue to inspire and resonate for generations to come. The artistry of Louis Armstrong was characterized by an extraordinary and often inseparable duality: the brilliance of his trumpet playing and the distinctiveness of his vocal style. These two elements, each powerful in its own right, coalesced to form a singular artistic identity that profoundly influenced generations of musicians and performers across the globe. It was this harmonious blend of instrumental virtuosity and vocal innovation that set Armstrong apart and cemented his legendary status. His trumpet playing from the earliest days in New Orleans was revolutionary. He transformed the instrument from a mere ensemble voice into a vehicle for individual expression, capable of soaring improvisations and intricate melodic lines. His tone was warm and commanding, his phrasing agile and inventive. He introduced a new rhythmic freedom, a swing that became the hallmark of jazz itself. Each note he played seemed imbued with a story, a feeling, a moment of spontaneous creation. He was a master of dynamics, capable of both delicate whispers and powerful brassy pronouncements, all delivered with an unparalleled sense of melodic logic. Yet, as his career progressed, his voice began to emerge as an equally significant, if not sometimes more celebrated aspect of his artistry. His gravelly, instantly recognizable timbre became as iconic as his trumpet solos. Armstrong's vocal delivery was not merely singing, it was an extension of his instrumental approach. He pioneered scat singing, using his voice as another instrument, improvising wordless melodies with a rhythmic sophistication that mirrored his horn work. This technique, first famously captured on Heebie-Jeebies, liberated vocalists from strict lyrical constraints, opening up new avenues for expressive freedom. His interpretations of popular songs were transformative. He didn't just sing the notes, he rephrased melodies, bent pitches, and infused lyrics with a profound emotional depth and an infectious joy that was uniquely his own. He approached a vocal line with the same improvisational spirit he applied to a trumpet solo, making each rendition fresh and personal. The warmth, humour, and sincerity in his voice resonated deeply with audiences, creating an intimate connection that transcended cultural and linguistic barriers. The interplay between his horn and his voice was often seamless. A vocal phrase might echo a trumpet lick, or a trumpet solo might mimic the rhythmic cadence of his singing. They were two sides of the same artistic coin, each informing and enriching the other. This unique combination created a complete musical persona, a sound that was instantly identifiable and universally adored. His dual mastery influenced countless musicians, demonstrating that the human voice could be as versatile and expressive as any instrument, and that an instrument could sing with the emotional directness of a human voice. Louis Armstrong's musical legacy extends deeply into the very architecture of jazz itself, most notably through his pivotal role in establishing the jazz soloist. Before Armstrong, early jazz was largely characterized by collective improvisation, where multiple instruments wove intricate, simultaneous melodic lines. While this created a rich polyphonic texture, it often lacked a focal point for individual expression. Armstrong fundamentally altered this paradigm, shifting jazz toward an art form centered on the singular voice of the improviser. He did not merely participate in the collective, he stepped forward, demanding attention with his trumpet. His solos were not just brief interjections, but rather fully formed musical statements, crafted with an unprecedented sense of melodic and rhythmic coherence. He understood the structure of a song and built his improvisations logically, developing themes, creating tension, and offering resolution. This approach transformed the solo from an incidental flourish into the emotional and intellectual core of a performance. Armstrong's innovations were particularly evident in his Hot 5 and Hot 7 recordings of the 1920s. These recordings are often cited as the crucible where the jazz solo, as we know it, was forged. Here Armstrong moved beyond simply embellishing a melody. He reimagined it, creating entirely new melodic lines that were both deeply personal and structurally brilliant. He demonstrated how an individual improviser could tell a compelling musical story within the framework of a song, only elevating the trumpet from a supporting role to that of a protagonist. His influence was immediate and profound. Other musicians, inspired by Armstrong's example, began to develop their own solo voices. The concept of the star soloist emerged, and the focus of jazz began to shift. Bands started to feature individual players more prominently, providing space for extended improvisations. This evolution laid the groundwork for future generations of jazz greats, from saxophonists to pianists, all of whom built upon the foundation Armstrong had so masterfully laid. He taught the world that jazz was not just about the collective sound, but also about the power and beauty of individual expression. His solos were models of creativity, technical mastery, and emotional depth, demonstrating that improvisation could be as rigorous and artistic as written composition. In this way, Louis Armstrong truly became the father of the solo, forever changing the trajectory of jazz and ensuring that the individual voice would remain central to its enduring appeal. Beyond his profound and foundational contributions to jazz, Louis Armstrong carved an indelible niche in the broader tapestry of popular culture. His musical genius transcended the boundaries of genre, seeping into and influencing a vast array of musical styles, from the burgeoning sounds of rhythm and blues to the nascent stages of rock and roll, and of course, mainstream pop music. His records were not confined to jazz aficionados. They found a home in the hearts of a much wider audience, drawn in by his infectious charisma and undeniable musicality. Louis Armstrong possessed a unique ability to connect with listeners across different demographics and musical preferences. His interpretations of standards, often imbued with his signature gravelly voice and playful trumpet flourishes, became definitive versions for many. He brought a sense of joy and authenticity to every performance, whether it was a complex jazz improvisation or a simple, heartfelt ballad. This universal appeal allowed his music to permeate radio airwaves and record players in homes that might not have otherwise engaged with jazz. His influence on pop music was subtle, yet pervasive. Many vocalists who emerged in the mid-20th century, even those in purely pop or R&B genres, absorbed elements of Armstrong's phrasing, his rhythmic sensibility, and his ability to imbue lyrics with deep emotional resonance. The very idea of a charismatic singing instrumentalist, capable of captivating an audience with both their voice and their instrument, owes a significant debt to Armstrong's pioneering presence. Furthermore, Armstrong's public image became synonymous with a profound and often gentle joy. His wide smile, his twinkling eyes, and his amiable demeanour projected an image of warmth and optimism that resonated deeply with people. He was not just a musician, he was an ambassador of goodwill, a figure whose very presence seemed to uplift spirits. This persona, cultivated over decades, solidified his status as a beloved icon, recognized globally not only for his musical brilliance, but also for the sheer happiness he seemed to embody. His later career hits such as Hello, Dolly, and What a Wonderful World are prime examples of his crossover appeal, reaching #1 on pop charts decades after his initial rise to fame. These songs cemented his place not merely as a jazz legend, but as a timeless pop culture figure whose music continues to bring comfort and delight to new generations. Louis Armstrong's journey as a black artist navigating the deeply entrenched segregation of America, while simultaneously ascending to a global stage, was profoundly complex. His unique position allowed him to become an unwitting yet powerful bridge builder between disparate cultures and races, even amidst the backdrop of a society grappling with profound racial injustice. Throughout his career, Armstrong faced the pervasive discrimination inherent in the American system, yet he chose a path of engagement rather than overt confrontation in his public persona. He understood the power of his music and his presence to transcend racial barriers, often performing for integrated audiences long before it was commonplace, and always delivering a performance of unwavering excellence and joy. This approach sometimes drew criticism from those who wished for a more direct, politically outspoken stance. Some viewed his amiable demeanour and entertainment style as acquiescence to racial stereotypes, or as insufficient in the face of the era's pressing civil rights struggles. However, a closer examination reveals a more nuanced strategy. Armstrong's global tours, often sponsored by the US State Department, presented a different image of America to the world. As Ambassador Satch, he brought an authentic, or joyful representation of American culture, particularly African American culture, to audiences in Europe, Africa, and Asia. In places where American racial policies were viewed with skepticism, Armstrong's warmth and musical genius offered a powerful counter-narrative, fostering connection and understanding through the universal language of music. He engaged with people of all backgrounds, sharing his art and his humanity, thereby subtly challenging preconceived notions and breaking down barriers on a personal human level. His steadfast commitment to his art and his unwavering professionalism, even when confronted with indignity, served as a quiet but potent form of resistance. He demanded respect through his unparalleled talent and integrity. While he rarely engaged in direct political rhetoric, his actions, such as his vocal condemnation of the Little Rock crisis in 1957, demonstrated that his gentle public persona did not mask a lack of awareness or conviction regarding racial injustice. Ultimately, Armstrong's music and his persona, with their inherent joy and humanity, reached across the racial divide in a way few others could. He created spaces of shared experience and appreciation, proving through his artistry that human connection could indeed transcend the artificial boundaries of race and culture. He opened doors, not always with a shout, but often with a smile and a trumpet's golden sound, paving the way for greater understanding and acceptance. The enduring legacy of Louis Armstrong is perhaps most tangibly preserved within the walls of his former home in Corona, Queens, which now stands as the Louis Armstrong House Museum. This humble residence, where he lived for nearly 3 decades with his wife Lucille, offers a uniquely intimate glimpse into the private life of a man whose public persona was known worldwide. It is more than just a house. It is a meticulously maintained testament to his personal tastes, his domestic routines, and the profound connection he felt to his community. The museum carefully preserves the original furnishings and artifacts, allowing visitors to step into the very rooms where Armstrong practiced, entertained friends, and simply lived. From his custom-built kitchen, reflecting Lucille's modern sensibilities, to his beloved den filled with records and reel-to-reel tapes, every detail contributes to a deeper understanding of the individual behind the legendary musician. The quiet hum of the neighborhood outside, largely unchanged since his time, adds to the sense of stepping back into a different era. Beyond the physical structure, the Louis Armstrong House Museum also serves as a vital repository for an unparalleled collection of archival materials. This vast archive comprises thousands of photographs, letters, musical manuscripts, personal recordings, and his famous private audio tapes. Armstrong was an avid recorder of his own life, documenting conversations, rehearsals, and reflections with a candidness that provides historians and fans alike with an invaluable primary source. These tapes, filled with his distinctive voice and laughter, offer an unfiltered window into his thoughts, his humour, and his perspective on the world. The ongoing efforts to study and celebrate Armstrong's contributions extend far beyond mere preservation. Researchers, musicians, and scholars continually delve into these archives, uncovering new insights into his musical innovations, his cultural impact, and the intricacies of his public and private life. Educational programs hosted by the museum engage new generations, ensuring that his story and his music remain vibrant and relevant. Through concerts, lectures, and interactive exhibits, the museum fosters a living appreciation for Armstrong's genius, illuminating his foundational role in jazz and American culture. It underscores his enduring presence, not merely as a figure from the past, but as an artist whose influence continues to resonate, enriching our understanding of music and humanity. The meticulous care taken to preserve this home and its contents ensures that the complete narrative of Louis Armstrong remains accessible, fostering continued inspiration and study for decades to come. The music of Louis Armstrong possesses a timeless quality that transcends the decades, continuing to captivate listeners across generations. His recordings, some dating back nearly a century, do not simply exist as historical artifacts. They pulse with a vibrant life that resonates profoundly with contemporary audiences. This enduring appeal stems from a fundamental connection to universal human emotions, expressed with an artistry that feels both sophisticated and inherently accessible. One of the primary reasons for this lasting resonance lies in the sheer joy and sincerity embedded within his performances. Whether he was playing a blistering trumpet solo or singing a gentle ballad, Armstrong infused every note with an unmistakable zest for life. Now, this palpable emotion bypasses intellectual analysis and speaks directly to the heart, evoking feelings of happiness, wonder, and a shared sense of humanity. His smile, often heard in his vocal inflections, was a sonic invitation to experience the world with a similar open-heartedness. Furthermore, Armstrong's musical language, while innovative for its time, was always rooted in melody and rhythm that possessed an innate human quality. His improvisations, though technically brilliant, never felt overly academic or detached. Instead, they mirrored the cadences of speech, the spontaneity of laughter, and the expressive power of a deeply felt story. This natural conversational approach to music allowed his artistry to communicate effectively across diverse cultural and linguistic backgrounds, making his sound universally understood and appreciated. His interpretations of standards, in particular, remain definitive. Songs like "What a Wonderful World" offer a simple yet profound message of hope and appreciation for the beauty of existence. This particular recording, released late in his career, found a new life decades later, becoming an anthem for peace and optimism. Its gentle melody and Armstrong's gravelly, comforting voice combined to create an almost meditative experience, offering solace and perspective in an often tumultuous world. Such pieces resonate because they tap into fundamental human desires for connection, beauty and meaning. Even his more intricate jazz pieces, filled with complex harmonic structures and virtuosic improvisation, maintain an inherent listenability. They invite listeners into a conversation rather than demanding strict adherence to a specific musical form. New audiences, perhaps unfamiliar with the intricacies of early jazz, find themselves drawn in by the sheer vitality and expressive power of his trumpet and voice. This ongoing connection proves that Armstrong's artistry was not merely a product of his era, but a timeless expression of musical genius that continues to inspire, comfort, and uplift all who encounter it. Louis Armstrong's journeys around the world transformed him into more than just an American musical export. He became a global citizen, a true ambassador for the universal spirit of music and the profound power of human connection. His travels, often sponsored by the US State Department during the Cold War, transcended mere diplomatic missions. And Armstrong brought with him not just the sounds of jazz, but an infectious joy and an undeniable warmth that dissolved barriers and fostered understanding wherever he went. He possessed a remarkable ability to communicate across linguistic and cultural divides, not through words alone, but through the sheer expressiveness of his horn and the sincerity of his smile. In Ghana, Nigeria, Japan, or Europe, audiences responded with an enthusiasm that transcended national identities. They saw in Armstrong a figure who embodied resilience, creativity, and an unshakable belief in the power of music to unite. His presence was a testament to art's capacity to build bridges where politics sometimes created chasms. This role as an ambassador of joy was not a calculated performance but an intrinsic part of his being. Armstrong genuinely loved people, and this affection radiated outward from every stage. He met crowds with open arms, signing autographs, posing for photographs, and engaging with locals with an authentic curiosity. This personal touch, combined with his unparalleled musical gifts, created an atmosphere of camaraderie and shared humanity. He did not simply play for people, he seemed to play with them, inviting them into his musical world. His music, with its blend of improvisation, melody, and rhythm, became a universal language. It spoke of shared human experiences, love, loss, celebration, and perseverance, in a way that resonated deeply regardless of background. Whether it was a mournful blues or an exuberant swing tune, Armstrong's performances provided a common emotional ground. He demonstrated through his life and his art, that music could be a powerful force for peace and mutual respect, fostering a sense of global community that stretched far beyond any political agenda. Thus, Louis Armstrong's legacy extends beyond his monumental contributions to jazz. He stands as a testament to the idea that a single individual, armed with talent, humility, and an abundance of joy, can indeed change the world, one note and one smile at a time, creating a lasting symphony of human connection that continues to reverberate across continents. Beyond the effervescent smile and the trumpet's bright sound, Louis Armstrong was a man of considerable depth and quiet complexity. His public persona, often perceived as an embodiment of pure, unadulterated joy, occasionally obscured the intricate layers of his private self. The Satchmo known to millions was a master of performance, a showman who instinctively understood how to connect with an audience. Yet, beneath this carefully cultivated exterior lay a resilient spirit, a keen observer, and a man who navigated the profound adversities of his era with remarkable dignity. He faced widespread racial prejudice throughout his career, a systemic challenge that demanded an immense internal fortitude. While he often chose a diplomatic, non-confrontational approach in public, his private reflections, particularly in his extensive collection of audio tapes and writings, revealed a sharp awareness of injustice and a quiet yet firm commitment to equality. His public condemnation of the Little Rock Crisis in 1957, for instance, demonstrated that his geniality did not equate to an absence of conviction. It was a strategic choice, a way to survive and thrive within a restrictive system rather than a sign of indifference. Armstrong's humour was another defining characteristic, often a gentle, self-deprecating wit that disarmed and charmed. It was a coping mechanism, a way to lighten heavy moments, and an expression of his inherent optimism. But this humour was often intertwined with a deep sensitivity and a capacity for introspection. He was a man who meticulously documented his life, writing letters, composing memoirs, and recording his thoughts on tape, creating an unparalleled archive that offers glimpses into the thoughtful mind behind the celebrity. His private life, while not without its challenges, was marked by devotion to his wife Lucille and a profound appreciation for the simple comforts of home. And the Louis Armstrong House Museum stands as a testament to this private world, revealing a man who cherished his domestic sanctuary, his garden, and his vast collection of recordings. Here, away from the glare of the stage lights, he was simply Louis, a man who found joy in everyday routines and quiet reflection. Ultimately, understanding Louis Armstrong requires acknowledging the interplay between his public exuberance and his private fortitude. He was a figure who embodied both profound joy and a quiet strength, a man who, through sheer resilience and an unwavering spirit, transcended the circumstances of his birth to become an enduring symbol of human possibility. His complexities only deepen the appreciation for his genius and his lasting impact. Louis Armstrong's enduring legacy extends far beyond the revolutionary notes he played on his trumpet or the distinctive gravel of his voice. While his musical innovations undeniably reshaped the landscape of jazz and popular music, his impact reverberates equally as a profound humanitarian and a powerful cultural force. He emerged from profound poverty and racial segregation to become a global figure, a testament to his indomitable spirit and a symbol of perseverance against immense odds. His travels across continents, often as a cultural ambassador for the United States, allowed him to bridge divides and foster understanding through the universal language of music. In an era marked by Cold War tensions and persistent racial strife, Armstrong's performances in diverse nations offered moments of shared humanity and joy. He did not preach or lecture. Instead, he simply played, he sang, and he smiled, inviting audiences of all backgrounds to connect on a fundamental emotional level. This subtle, yet powerful form of diplomacy made him an unexpected but highly effective advocate for peace and cross-cultural appreciation. Armstrong's life story itself serves as an inspiring narrative of resilience. He faced chronic health issues, the relentless demands of touring, and the indignities of racial discrimination throughout his career. Yet, he met each challenge with an unyielding dedication to his art and an infectious optimism. This unwavering spirit became a source of inspiration for countless individuals, demonstrating that joy and creativity could flourish even in the most challenging environments. He understood the power of art not merely as entertainment, but as a vital force capable of uplifting the human spirit. His music, whether a soaring trumpet solo or a heartfelt vocal rendition, consistently conveyed a message of hope and an affirmation of life. This profound ability to communicate joy and foster a sense of connection remains a cornerstone of his appeal. In the tapestry of the 20th century, Louis Armstrong stands as more than a musician. He's a beacon of perseverance, a testament to the unifying power of artistic expression, and a lasting symbol of humanity's capacity to find and share joy, even in the midst of adversity. His legacy is etched not only in musical scores but also in the hearts of those he touched with his boundless spirit and timeless art. As the gentle current of this narrative begins to slow, we reflect upon the extraordinary journey of Louis Armstrong. From the vibrant yet challenging streets of early 20th century New Orleans, he rose to become a figure of unparalleled global influence. His life was a testament to the transformative power of art, a quiet, steady rhythm that reshaped not only music, but also the very fabric of culture and history. We have traced his path from a young boy captivated by sound to a revolutionary musician whose trumpet solos and vocal improvisations redefined an entire genre. His innovation was not merely technical, it was deeply emotional, speaking directly to the human heart. He carved a new expressive space within music, elevating the individual voice, and forever changing how we listen and connect to jazz. Beyond the notes and melodies, Armstrong's impact resonates profoundly through his spirit. Despite facing the pervasive racial prejudices of his time and enduring chronic health struggles, his joy for life and dedication to his craft remained unwavering. He navigated complex societal landscapes with a blend of strategic persona and deep personal conviction, always seeking to bridge divides through the universal language of music. His travels as a cultural ambassador saw him transcend the role of a mere performer, becoming a global symbol of connection and understanding. He demonstrated that art could be a powerful force for unity, a gentle hand extended across borders and cultures, fostering moments of shared humanity. Louis Armstrong's legacy is a rich tapestry woven with threads of musical genius, profound resilience, and an infectious, enduring joy. His influence is not confined to the annals of jazz history. It permeates popular culture, continuing to inspire musicians, artists, and individuals across generations. His music remains a soothing presence, a reminder of the beauty, complexity, and enduring hope within the human experience. Let us carry forward this gentle understanding of a life lived with such profound purpose and passion. As the echoes of his trumpet fade softly into the quiet, may a sense of calm settle upon you, leaving you with a peaceful reflection on the remarkable journey of Louis Armstrong, a true titan of the 20th century. His story, like his music, invites quiet contemplation and a lasting sense of warmth.